Shimon's private life was not what Taizong wanted. However, Shimon confessed, and King Taejong had to punish him. In this process, King Taejong abandoned his selfish interests and strictly enforced the law in accordance with the laws of the country. Then what is it that sells you? Kiang immediately answered King Sejong's question. Sonia, we're getting married soon. Isn't it all thanks to Abimama and Iamamama that Soja stayed safe until he reached the age of marriage? Therefore, I petitioned to Soja Abimama. Please restore her maternal grandfather. My mom is in serious trouble. As a child, how can you ignore your mother suffering from severe pain? I'd beg you to acknowledge the merits that Soja has done so far, even if they are insignificant, and accept my petition. Sejong thought deeply about Hyang's words. The part about using Ryu Jonghyun was definitely a high possibility. The fact that Ryu Jonghyun said such a thing to his father-in-law was something that even those in the newspaper at the time saw, except during the new year. However, there was no evidence to confirm that Ryu Jonghyun's words were Taejong's words. Considering what Ryu Jonghyun did to strengthen the priesthood after Taejong's death, there was a high possibility that Ryu Jonghyun carried out an operation in the middle, and filial piety of incense was also a really good material to use. In Joseon, where Confucianism was the national religion, it was rare for it to be praised as much as filial piety. Lastly, looking at the current situation, the issue of royal authority, which was the biggest concern, seemed like there was little to worry about. Sejong's own power was strong, and the presence of Hyang, the crown prince, could not be ignored. In particular, looking at the military, King Sejong himself sometimes showed support to the extent that he wondered, is our Joseon army my army, or the crown prince's army? After carefully considering the back and forth, King Sejong finally came to a conclusion. Okay, let's do that. The next morning, the assembly began, and with all the ministers present, King Sejong gave orders to the merchant ships. Go and call for the new year. Yes, your highness. Zhang Cho, who had been summoned in this way, repeated exactly what he had said in front of King Sejong the night before. After the New Year's speech was over, King Sejong spoke to the ministers. After thinking about it, could the situation mentioned by Ryu Jonghyun really be the true feelings of the late King Taejong the Great? Rather, considering Ryu Jonghyun's past behavior, it is highly likely that Ryu Jonghyun used the middleman for his own benefit. Therefore, I believe that Shimon's death was a misjudgment of the previous king due to Ryu Jonghyun's misbehavior. Therefore, let's reinstate Shimon. What do you think? The ministers answered with one voice to King Sejong's question. Your Majesties will be done. The news that Shimon's lottery has been decided was immediately spread everywhere. Queen Sohyun, who learned that the crown prince was the mastermind behind this, called Hyang. Let's count. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hyang politely responded to the sight of Queen Sohyun, crying while holding her hand. It was something I had to do as a child. Now, let the deepening calm down and may you live long and strong. You have to see not only your grandchildren, but also your great-grandchildren. That's how it should be. Cancer. You have to do that. That night, King Sejong, who visited Queen Sohyun's room, held her hand and said, I'm sorry for all this time. Please forgive Jabi for being indifferent. No. The new concubine has no time left. Queen Sohyun was in tears again after the day. After all this, it was finally Hyang's wedding day. Among the 6 rites, which are established etiquette, the 4, Napchai, Napjing, Meet, and Chaibin, were performed and the Hyang is given to the crown prince by the king before the Chinyan. Go to the villa and bring the crown princess. Words of caution were carried out. Crown, looking at your daily behavior, I don't think there's any need to worry, but since you don't know that it's a human matter, I won't say anything. From now on, you are the head of a family. Never be nervous and be cautious in everything you do. I will keep this in mind. After finishing Imhiankaji, Hyang got on a horse and headed to the villa. The crown prince muttered softly on the horse heading to the villa. We have to do this 2 more times? Because the crown princess and her concubines all had different wishes, the auspicious days were also different, so the wedding ceremony had to be held 3 times. As I rode the horse that had been caught in the race, Hyang simply continued his thoughts through the stream of consciousness. It's the first night. Come to think of it, this is the first night of my life, both in the 21st century and this time, right? As soon as the words first night came out, a feast of all kinds of flesh colors unfolded in Hyang's mind. The eunuchs who were watching started whispering at the sight of Hyang smiling alone. Isn't this the first time you've seen the crown prince like that? Does it look like Prince you looking at a model locomotive? I guess it's good. I also want to get married. As one eunuch complained, a fellow eunuch who was moving next to him looked at him with a mysterious expression. Why? The fellow eunuch who received the question asked with a still mysterious expression. You've been out a lot at night lately. In response to the colleague's question, the officer in question was startled, looked around, and said something to his colleague. Chasha, do you want to see everyone running away? There was a reason why the eunuch was scared. In the case of Ming Dynasty eunuchs, the entire genitals were removed, but in the Joseon Dynasty, only the testicles were removed. However, in the case of Joseon, since erections were possible, there was a high possibility that various scandals would occur with the court ladies who lived in the palace together. Therefore, if a colleague's question was slightly incorrect, it could result in a major accident that could put his or her life at risk. The eunuch said he wanted to get married. Now that I think about it, he is often out at night these days as going around a eunuch so-and-so said he wants to get married, and that eunuch is close to a court lady so-and-so. Could it be that the two have some kind of relationship? And ultimately changed to so-and-so a eunuch and a court lady were having an affair. And if these rumors reached the ears of merchant ships or court ladies, it would cause a bloody storm. The internal regulations of the eunuchs and court ladies were stricter and crueler than imagined. So if they made a mistake, the people involved in the rumor disappeared without a sound. Another eunuch gave a scolding look to his colleague who was sweating after saying, I want to get married. If you want to get married, just go. Why are you so surprised? The term came about because eunuchs in Joseon were able to marry, unlike in China. However, the eunuch who was dismissed answered in a sullen voice. I don't have any money. So, I told you to drink a little less. While the attendants were shouting, Qiang was still surrendering to the stream of consciousness. As expected, the video, evil. I didn't delete the jigbaggery folder on the computer in my room at the blacksmith shop. At the friendly reception held at the villa, Qiang was able to see the crown princess face for the first time. Oh, it's the center. Cheer up. When Qiang saw the crown princess face, she internally cheered. When secretly observing the Jianghor Tea Party, posted by Jungjin, Qiang evaluated it as a girl group. If it's a girl group, of course it has a center. Thinking like that, Qiang worked hard with his telescope. What a sight. No matter how you choose, you made the right choice. The beauty of the three remaining finalists was a challenge. Still, after some hard work, the center was decided. But since the other two were also closely matched, Qiang, who was impaired in selection, handed the ball to Sejong. No matter what I do, if I still have regrets, I have to at least make an excuse. However, due to internal and external circumstances, all three members were taken, and from then on, Qiang fell into another trouble. Then, who was the crown princess? And Qiang, who saw the crown princess for the first time at the long-awaited royal reception, could not erase her smile. As mentioned above, the candidate for the crown prince of Qiang was unconventional compared to the customs up to that time. The off-white color was the same, but the biggest difference was that all of the candidates were tall. Of course, it wasn't as elongated as 21st century fashion models, but it was a bit larger than the average for the same period. This was the influence of Jiamji, who was looking for Ju-Su. The members of the Sword World who received orders from King Sejong shared their opinions on which discipline was best. I understand that you want to find a pretty and kind-hearted person, but how about setting the criteria in more detail? A little more detail? Wouldn't it be enough to just be pretty and kind-hearted? You bastard. It's not just about picking a daughter-in-law from a high-ranking family. It's about being the crown princess. This is indeed the crown princess. You ignorant bastard. That's right. Bastard. I still left out the analects of Confucius. You ignorant bastard. After seeing the members bickering among themselves, the leader opened his mouth. Looking at you guys. Add academic knowledge to the standards of the elites. The relay members, who had been complaining about the relay orders, stopped arguing and asked questions. You mean learning? Okay, as you all know, is the crown prince a bit smart? Do you want to push the pretty and stupid Gyu-Su and get his ugly hair hit? Ah. After knowledge was added to the criteria for selecting a student, height was added. Key? Why the height? Think about it. The same goes for His Majesty the Lord. No, let's think about the Book of King Taejo first. Were there any short gentlemen? When the member who mentioned height mentioned King Sejong's ancestry, the members all exclaimed in exclamation. Ah. If you want to use one sword, having a good size is the answer. Have you ever wielded a sword? It's better than being dishonest. One of the bickering members cautiously expressed a different opinion. Then, a sturdy Ju-Su. What if I really recommended Jusoo like that, and was later criticized by the crown prince? Then let's compromise on the height. In this way, height was included in Jusoo's selection criteria, and the scent was satisfactory. After the royal reception ended safely, Kiang returned to the Donggunjeon and held the Dongro ceremony with the crown prince. After the Dongro ceremony, Kiang and the crown princess, wearing light clothes instead of heavy formal robes, at least a dragon robe and dangue, sat facing the Wansang. This really doesn't add up. Kiang grumbled across the threshold with a face full of dissatisfaction. Is it really necessary for there to be people next to the door like this? Lady Jimilsang, sent by Queen Sohyun, responded with a smile to Hyang's complaint after seeing the court ladies and officials gathered outside the door of the bridal room. The law of the land is coming. Kiang clicked his tongue at the answer from Lady Jimil, heard outside the door. SK. There is no privacy. No privacy? I understand. Instead, never open that door. K22, yes, sir. Lady Jimil, who sat waiting outside the bridal room, listened to the movements in the room. It's the first night. Is it going to go well? Unlike King Sejong, who came back from Saga after giving birth to a child, Kiang was spending her first night at the palace. Kiang had no sexual experience until now. Therefore, Lady Jimil had no choice but to focus her attention on the movements in the room. In any case, one had to enter the room even under the crown prince's order, and Palace Lady Jimil had the authority to do so. Lady Jimil, who had been paying attention to the movements in the room, had a dumbfounded expression on her face. This was because Hyang and the crown princess were only having random conversations in the room. So, what is the crown princess hobby? I also like reading books and doing handicrafts, but my favorite things are horseback riding and archery. Archery? Hey, what are your skills? It was a bet between the ladies, but I almost never lost the bet. That's amazing. Do you like archery too? I like archery, but these days, I like to shoot other things instead of a bow. Please stay for a moment. After a brief rustling sound, Kiang continued speaking. It's the flesh and blood horseback rifle that Joseon cavalrymen use these days. It's really fun to shoot with this. Is that so? Let's do it together sometime. Yes. Lady Jimil's heart pounded as she heard the conversation coming from inside the room. Oh my, are you going to be talking about the president or something when you have nothing to do right now? Jimil Sangum was feeling frustrated outside, but the scent was just as frustrating. Even in the 21st century, incense was far from dating. He was a well-known nerd in middle and high school, and after entering college, no woman approached him as he was labeled as a global nerd, who went all the way to the United States to become a nerd. I need to create some kind of atmosphere. Let's just lie down recklessly. Let's take it off. Let's catch it. You can't. In movies or dramas. Shit. All the movies I've seen have nothing to do with romanticism. Driving me crazy. In addition to the fact that creating a romantic atmosphere is completely uncharted territory, what made people hesitate about the scent was the crown princess's age. Crown princess is 15 years old. She was also 14 years old, but she didn't care about her own age, only her crown princess's age. Akong. Clang, clank, clank. It was a scent that kept me hesitating due to the psychological break that kept hitting me even when I tried to forget it. Ding. What took away that atmosphere was the sound of the bell coming from the bell tower. Kiang heard the bell ring and turned his head to check the time. It's already midnight. Come on, let's get some sleep. Yes. The crown princess, who answered modestly and lowered her head. Even the nape of her neck was red from embarrassment and tension. Lady Jimil, who was listening to the conversation outside, clenched her fists. At loss. When the lights in the bridal room were turned off, some of the court ladies who followed Jimil Sengung tried to make a hole in the door. However, behind the paper covering the window glass was standing there, and beyond that, another piece of paper was blocking the view. Give up. The first place where glass doors were installed was Donggunjeon. Do you think you would just let it go? Upon hearing the words of the court ladies working in the East Palace, the court ladies who came with Lady Jimil had faces full of regret. When the crown prince and crown princess finished their first royal ceremony, Palace Lady Jimil, who was waiting outside, had a strange look on her face. It seems average, but it also seems a little short. Since the time and frequency of radiation were also related to the future death, Prince Jimilsang went into the analysis with a serious face. Just then, I heard Hyang's voice. Now that we know the basics, let's do it right. Yes? Lowering? What do you mean by that? I only learned about how couples relate from books, so today is my first time. Now that we know how to do it, let's do it right. Yes, sir. It's a book. Suddenly, the crown princess stopped talking, and after a while, an erotic sound began to leak out. Ah! Then, the inside of the bridal room became hot. This time. Again? Now, this too. Jimil Sangung looked outside while listening to the sound coming from inside. Dawn was breaking. What the hell is this? Due to the incessant noise, the area under Jimil Sang's eyes became increasingly puffy. In the morning, Prince Jimil Sang reported the situation of the first night to Jungjin. So, did the crown prince survive his first night safely? Yes, Your Majesty, you survived your first night safely. But why does your voice sound like that? Why are you doing this when she's full of nasal sounds? I have a bit of a nosebleed. Jimil Sangung slightly raised his head, and there was blood-stained cotton stuck in both nostrils. Oh my, have you been tired lately? Okay, isn't the heir worried? To Queen Sohyun's question, Lady Jimil Sang gave a firm answer. You never have to worry about your successor. From that day on, the rumor began to spread that the crown prince was a genius in that field as well, and families with sons or grandsons of similar age began to move in secret. Find the book the crown prince said he saw. Diak Inji Hyang, who had become familiar with the crown princess, had an even hotter first night with the two concubines. Thanks to this, King Sejong asked Hyang as follows. You mentioned a book. Huh. Where and what book did you get? Hyang responded to Sejong's question with an embarrassed expression. Among the books I had previously obtained through invoice, there were several books related to the relationship between men and women. Even if you die, you won't be able to talk about what you learned on the internet. In response to Hyang's answer, Sejong made a request to Hyang in a subdued voice. Okay, was there such a book? It's embarrassing. I guess I'll have to check to see what it is. Bring it and see. It was embarrassing, so I burned it right away. Hey you bastard. At that moment, Sejong let out a loud noise. A surprised Hyang responded while looking at Sejong. So, what did Soja do wrong? Hyang asked back with a puzzled expression at Sejong's words. Then Sejong answered, how can you treat books so carelessly? You're burning me. You're so embarrassed. Still, Hyang quickly responded to Sejong's excessive reaction. Considering the number of children's half-brothers and half-brothers, there is no need to read the book. Learning should never stop. In response to Sejong's answer, Hyang lowered her head and opened her mouth. The rumor that the crown prince is amazing even at night spread widely within the palace. Thanks to this, the Missouri people who were doing odd jobs here and there in the palace also started talking about the rumor. The Missouri people who worked in the royal palace were not court ladies. The ladies-in-waiting were those who selected women who were strong and good at working among civilian women. Therefore, although there were unmarried women, there were also many married women. The Missouri people selected in this way received identification badges and commuted to the palace. As the name Ashuri suggests, his main job was to fetch water for use in the palace, but other than that, he was also responsible for starting fires in the furnace and doing all kinds of other chores. The work is difficult, and there are many married women who have suffered through all kinds of hardships in childbirth with strong personalities and are evaluated as strong and good at their jobs. So all kinds of outspoken conversations took place in places where Missouri people gathered. Sir, have you heard the rumor? What rumor? I mean the East Palace, the East Palace. The Missouri people who were waiting for their turn with water jars, lined up near the well, talked about the East Palace. However, if I mentioned the name of the fragrance carelessly, I could get scolded. So I continued the conversation by lumping it into Donggungjin. East Palace? Iced coffee. I heard you're that amazing. You said you got a nosebleed 3 times while sitting guarded by Lady Jimil? OMG, that's amazing. If it's Jimil Sangung, isn't he a nobleman with his seal engraved on it? A guy like that got nosebleeds 3 times? Oh my, that gentleman is worth 3 horses and a half dozen. When his colleague Masuri, who was giving and receiving comments, admired him, Masuri, who was the first to open his mouth, sighed. Pooh. Some people make Lady Jimil's nose bleed, and in our house, as soon as her back is on the floor, she starts snoring. There is no joy in living, there is no joy in living. Even if I don't wish for 3 to 3 days, I wouldn't wish for it to be at least a dozen. Huh? Even if it's only a few dollars, I'll make you meat soup every morning. Ho 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 ho. Ho 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 ho. The Missouri people who were talking like that laughed, and told the village to leave. The young Masuri who was watching this asked the older Masuri next to him, what does SEO mal de do mean? You don't have to know yet. Oh, what do you mean? Yes? What do you mean? As the younger Masuri continued to cling to him, the older Masuri began to talk. In a village in the countryside, there lived a very wealthy noble couple. One day, the couple woke up at the same time a little before the sun rose and immediately made eye contact and started working. When the fire was burning, the servant girl who was working in the kitchen called her wife. "Lady, madam, how much rice should I eat for breakfast?" "Lady, it's manida." When the female servant, who was known for being rude, kept calling, the wife answered from inside the room. Daha, become. "Hey, I understand." When dawn fully broke, the wife came out to the kitchen, saw a large pot filled with rice, was frightened, and grabbed the servant girl. "You bitch! Are you crazy? Why are you cooking so much food?" "Ma'am told me to do it this way." "When did I?" Madam said, Daha. You said, "It works." If you add 10 to 10 words, it's one word, and if you do all of them, it's 2 words, 5 words, and when you put them together, it's 5 words. This is how the saying "Seal Maldadu" came about. "Ruler, it's time. Let's put some water in it." After finishing the story, the older Masuri walked towards the well with great strides, and the younger Masuri, with a bright red face, followed at a trotting pace. Meanwhile, the families who became Hyang's in-laws through marriage were also busy moving about. "Have you finished packing your bags?" "Yes, father." "Woda." The parents let out a long sigh as they saw their sons preparing to leave. The sons had to leave for the far and rugged north for the well-being of the family and their own safety. Hyang's marriage was decided, and King Sejong invited all of Hyang's in-laws. King Sejong gathered the people who would become Hyang's wives at the banquet hall in Gyeonghoru and conducted the banquet while sitting at the head of the table. To celebrate the auspicious occasion where the crown prince's spouse has been chosen, I have asked you to bring all of you who will become the royal family's in-laws. I am devastated. Those who were invited and visited Gyeonghoru all bowed their heads to King Sejong's words. The banquet began, but the people in his wife's family looked at Sejong with great nervousness. "If you make even the slightest mistake, you're out of business." After some time had passed, King Sejong got to the point. "The reason Gwaine invited you today is because he has something to tell you. I will listen closely." "Is what is coming?" The people in his wife's family swallowed their dry saliva and looked at King Sejong. Sejong slowly opened his mouth. "After the crown prince's wedding, no, even now, many guests will come to your house. Isn't that right? I will close the gate immediately." To King Sejong's point, all the prospective craftsmen responded with one voice. In fact, as soon as word spread that she had become the crown prince's concubine or concubine, not only gifts but also relatives and acquaintances who had rarely visited her came flocking to her. It's also rude to close the door unconditionally. "Please treat me with hospitality, but please don't do anything that will embarrass the royal family." "I will keep this in mind." Everyone in the prospective wife's family bowed their heads and responded. "And, my sons truly adore me." That is an undeserved compliment. They are lucky if they can barely pay for food. Is that possible? It is said that when you see one, you know 10. Okay, have you seen the past? To King Sejong's question, the crown princess and the concubine's brothers answered one by one with trembling voices. "I work at Hojo." "Kilter? It must be really hard. Just suffer a little more. The first half of the event is almost over. If you do your best, you will get good results. I will reform my bones." Soon, one of the sturdy sons opened his mouth. "I passed the military service exam not long ago. In Mugwa, you must work harder to become a shield that protects the country. I will continue to work hard again." Among the 9 sons of the 3 families who attended the banquet, one worked at the Hojo, and except for one who had passed the civil service examination, the remaining 7 were preparing for the civil service examination. It was just as reported. Sejong, who confirmed the situation, lightly stroked his beard and opened his mouth. "I would like to give opportunities to my other sons, excluding those who work at Hojo. Is that okay?" In response to King Sejong's question, the artisans bowed deeply. "I am devastated." Not only the craftsmen, but also the sons involved bowed deeply. "I am devastated." However, Sejong's next words were not good at all. "We have prepared places in the northern frontier. Go and build up your achievements and achievements. Then, later, when the time comes, you will use it even more preciously." The sons who liked Sejong's words froze. However, soon the person who passed the military service exam answered in a loud voice. "I will carry out my will. I am devastated that you have given me such a great opportunity." The other sons also cried and responded as if they were eating mustard. "I am devastated. I look forward to it." King Sejong, who had completed one agenda item, glared at the incense craftsman. Soon, the titles will be given to my in-laws. I have something to ask you. Command. It's simple. Don't forget whose blood you inherited. Gwaine can do the same if necessary. At King Sejong's words, the inside of Jeonhoru literally froze. Everyone except Sejong had their heads down with white faces. In the end, the three craftsmen answered with trembling voices. I will keep in mind and carry out my actions. In this way, among the sons of the three families, except for the son who worked at Hojo, all others prepared to leave for the north. Soja, then we will leave now. Okay, Ki-yi. The mother was saddened by the sight of her sons bowing, wiping her tears with her clothes. The father sitting next to her tried hard to keep his cool and encouraged his son. Okay, think of this as an opportunity and do your best. Yes. Well then, father, mother, please be safe. The sons who paid their respects left the family and headed north. Except for the crown prince's wedding, which was held in a hurry, as if beans were roasted by lightning. The second half of the 10th year of King Sejong's reign, the New Year's year, seemed to go by peacefully. However, on October 16th, an appeal for impeachment was filed at the Constitutional Court. The target of impeachment was the Emperor of the Banjo Pansio. Yi Sunmong, Emperor of the province, was caught by the Emperor while having an affair with the Emperor's Joseon concubine, Wo Wabong, the Minister of Military Affairs, and the Emperor shaved the heads of both of them. After Yi Sunmong reported falsely, he did not perform his duties. The Emperor illegally defrauded a Joseon, and Yi Sunmong faked sick leave and did not work, so he deserves to be severely punished. Upon receiving the appeal, King Sejong immediately issued an order. Keep those involved in the Wagumbu and interrogate them. I follow your orders. Meanwhile, after hearing the story, King shook her head lightly. No. Was there such a thing as vile or Seedal in this era? The gentlemen who have grown old are also strong. In the end, when everything turned out to be true, King Sejong gave the order. Recover all direct concubines and public concubines given to Yi Sunmong and the Emperor. Lose half of all your assets. And both of them should be imprisoned for an indefinite period of time. I follow your orders. Meanwhile, the officer recorded all of this and added. When the king ordered the criminals to be sentenced to document collection, all the ministers agreed. The officer discusses. There are almost no exiles these days. It is deplorable that there are so few respected old gods. As the emperor was sentenced to document reorganization, the position of military inspector general became vacant. Who would be better? Although he ordered his ministers to recommend the right person, King Sejong himself searched his memory to find the right person. While King Sejong was looking for the right person, Du Sung-ji came in with a scroll. Something? This is a record of the paperwork completed this month. Leave it and go. Yes. Sejong's eyes were fixed on one spot as he opened the scroll that Du Sung-ji had left behind and checked its contents. Byongjo's grades like this? How? King Sejong, who was closely examining the records of soldiers who recorded achievements that surpassed other departments of the Six Dynasties, fixed his gaze on one name. Jo Mal-seng. He entered the records office after receiving a document organizer and displayed his outstanding ability to quickly organize the military records. After confirming the name, Sejong smiled and murmured, there was someone worth using. The next day, as soon as the inquiry began, King Sejong called the Yongwijing to check the situation. Okay, have you found suitable candidates? Yes, I'm guessing now. Still? When King Sejong's voice became hard, Yongwijing immediately explained the reason. The situation is such that all the right people are now heading to the northern frontier. Oh, I see. King Sejong nodded at Yongwijing's answer. King Sejong and the government's ambitious expansion into the north was proceeding quite smoothly. According to reports delivered every 10 days, Joseon's northern, especially northeastern, river area was steadily expanding. And, as it expanded, it was absorbing more and more people. Among the reasons why people continued to enter, armed conflict was at the forefront. This was because while the Joseon army clearly demonstrated its might, few Jurchen people dared to provoke with force. However, the reason why more people were needed than expected was because the civilian policy was as smooth as the Jurchen people's smooth operation. If you go to the north, the government will give you a field, tax-free for 5 years. When the rumor first spread, farmers showed little enthusiasm. Thanks to this, local officials in the Samnam region, where personnel evaluations were held, began to think about how to increase the number of farmers who would apply for civil service. One of the local officials who was mulling this over appealed to King Sejong. Under the current situation, there are no farmers willing to volunteer as civilians. Please give me a suitable bait to attract farmers. What else is appropriate other than tax exemption? Kiang immediately answered King Sejong's question. Now, in order to increase the production of Diok Gap-style gunpowder, the production of GAMU must be increased. Please tell me that if you start soybean farming, the government will purchase the entire amount. The ministers and ministers all responded to Hyang's words. What a brilliant sight. Please do just that. Gwaine thinks so too. In this way, a BIDAP was sent to the local officials of the Samnam region. The local officials who received the reply immediately spread the word. If you farm soybeans, the government will purchase all of them. The farmers who heard the rumor began to shake little by little, but there was no real movement yet. It's good that the government buys soybeans, but will they buy that much? No. What do you need so many beans for? It's not like Nara eats soybean paste instead of rice. So, among those who expressed such doubts, those with quick thinking, I immediately left my position and applied for Social Security. Did this guy drink during the day? Why are you suddenly saying that you are going to the north? I can't survive. Of course, those who made arbitrary decisions were immediately ripped off by their wives, and the husbands explained why. Think about the owner too. What kind of food is that dog shit that he can't live without? Dog shit. What is your favorite thing these days? Guy Jack. A plan. In response to young Gaetong's answer, Gaetong's father continued. Did you hear? These days, it is a rule for every household to eat it once or twice a month. Right. But why is that? What is the most important thing in chicken farming other than chicken? Oil. Soybean oil too. Gaetong's mother immediately understood what he said and got busy. When did you go to the north? I have some things lying around here and there, so take care of them. In order to obtain the glycerin needed to produce Diok Gap-style gunpowder, the Joseon dynasty distributed large quantities of soybean oil as well as oil obtained from meat, especially pork. However, the government had to purchase a large amount of soybeans because the amount was not large enough to be extracted through traditional pressure extraction rather than chemical extraction as in Korea in the 20th and 21st centuries. The amount spent on this was by no means a small amount. Although the amount recovered from distributing soybean oil was significant, when calculating profit and loss, the company was facing a deficit. In this situation, Hojo Panseo Kim Jiam submitted a request to King Sejong. Under these circumstances, I think it is right to postpone the manufacture of Diok Gap-style gunpowder. No, it works. Please let us know. Absolutely not. As soon as Kim Jiam finished speaking, fierce opposing opinions began to pour out from the military corps. Already from the late Goryeo dynasty, the core force of the military was artillery. In particular, in the case of the Navy, as seen in actual combat records, it was an army that started with guns and ended with guns. In particular, as soon as gunpowder was improved by Hyang, it was the naval forces that adopted it without a second thought. And as soon as the design of the Panoxian came out from Hyang's Research Institute, it was the naval force that built a prototype ship to check its performance and then requested King Sejong to immediately mass-produce it. Let's mass-produce? Yes. The hull is large, so it can overcome large waves, and above all, it is taller than existing wires, making it easy to block pirate ships. But the best part is that it can mount a lot more artillery than the existing front lines. King nodded at the actions of the naval forces, which were enough to be called firepower enthusiasts. I heard that Chungyugung didn't just come out. To the Navy, Diok Gap-style gunpowder was an item worth thousands of dollars. In other words, the same power can be achieved by using only half of the existing gunpowder. In other words, only half of the existing gunpowder had to be loaded on each front, and other materials such as food or drinking water could be loaded in the remaining space. Therefore, for the Navy, which had to consider the spatial constraints of the battle line, the cessation of production of Diok Gap-style gunpowder was something that must be prevented. This was the same for the Army as well. The Army also had a significant proportion of artillery, and Diok Gap-type gunpowder was a precious commodity that relieved the burden of artillery. That's why the military put up desperate resistance to Kim Jiam's words, saying, "It's better to cut open the stomach." In the end, King Sejong sided with the military. Even if we suffer a loss, it is something we have no choice but to accept. Therefore, I will not accept the Hojo decision. I follow your orders. Kim Jiam had to accept Sejong's decision. As the story goes, on the day that decision was made, Kim Jiam was on the verge of being grabbed by the military police and collar. Damn it, Inspector. Check the financial statements. Try it. In any case, with the problem of poor production resolved, the number of farmers willing to migrate to the north increased significantly. As the number of people planning to immigrate faster and in larger quantities than expected increased, more and more military forces were required in the north. Another unexpected event occurred in the north, such as the rapid increase in the number of migrating farmers. Another unexpected thing that happened in the north was the mass exodus of the Jurchen people. When first planning the strategy of exploring the north, the military expected the percentage of aftershocks to be at most 60%. 60% is a generous strike. If you look at the personalities of Yojin, most of them will either resist or leave. Look at those Odori guys. In the example of the Odori tribe, who left and returned after the conciliation of Emperor Hachu and Yangrak, the maximum the military caught was 60%. However, as the northern exploration actually progressed, the rate of noblemen among the Jurchen people started at 70% and gradually increased. Why? Isn't it all thanks to you? King Sejong responded to Yang Wijing's words with a slight smile. That would be fine, but please find out the reason right now. Don't just assume that a good thing is a good thing, and then make a big deal out of it later. I follow your orders. In this way, the government ministers immediately found the cause. Resale shop. As farmers moved to the north, Hojo's monopoly stores were opened in newly created towns. When the monopoly was opened, it attracted the attention of the Jurchen people who lived as neighbors. What is that place? To the question of a Jurchen who was fluent in Korean, the farmer answered with an expression that it was no big deal. Excuse me? It's a monopoly. What is a monopoly store? You can buy salt and candy there. Yeo Jinin's eyes opened wide as he questioned the farmer's words. Can I buy salt? That's right. Can I live too? Go and ask. At the farmer's words, Yeo Jinin got on a horse and headed to the monopoly. What's going on? When the Jurchen tribe entered the monopoly, not only the dispatched officials of Hojo, but also the soldiers who stood guard looked at the Jurchen tribe with nervous faces. I heard you can buy salt here. In response to Yeo Jinin's question, the Hojo official answered with a relaxed expression. Salt? Iced coffee. If you are a noble Yojin person, you can live. Do you have a certificate of honor? Here it is. Yeo Jinin searched in her arms, took out a certificate, and held it out. After checking the document with the official seal, the Hojo official confirmed Jurchen's residence on the map hanging behind him and nodded. It's under our jurisdiction. Then you can live. Should I buy it now? Can you really live? In response to Yeo Jinin's question filled with disbelief, the Hojo official smiled and answered. Could they come all the way to the north and tell lies? So should I buy it or not? I'm really busy, so please speak quickly. At the urging of the Hojo official, Yeo Jinin came to his senses and answered. I haven't brought anything worth selling right now. What should I bring? Everything that can become wealth. Cows, horses, sheep, and grain, as well as fur, gold, and silver. All right, I'll be back soon. Seeing Yeo Jinin running in a hurry, a police officer urgently called him to stop him. Look, I have to take this certificate. If you don't have this, you're in trouble. Yes? Yes. Thank you. Yeo Jinin, who took the certificate of honor, put the certificate in question in her arms, immediately said hello, and hurried out. Cases similar to the Jurchen people occurred here and there in the northern frontier. For the Jurchen people, being able to securely obtain salt, the most essential material for survival, was like a rope sent from the sky. In the end, seeing the wealthy Jurchen people offering their livestock and grains to get not only salt, but also candy, the Jurchen people who were not yet wealthy started competing to become wealthy. As the situation progressed, the demand for manpower in the north increased significantly. Existing troops were withdrawn to protect the boundaries of the rapidly expanding river area. Inside the settlement, additional troops were deployed to prevent conflict and maintain security between immigrants from the Samnam region and the Jurchen tribe, leading to a shortage of people. I liked the rapid progress of the northern expansion, but this side effect arose. The position of military inspector general needs to be filled quickly. When King Sejong spoke with an expression of regret at the Yang Wijing's answer, the Hyangzhou judge admonished him. The emperor said that the crime was so great that there was nothing he could do, but his Sunmong was important again. Great. Say something that makes sense. Before the sentencing judge could finish his sentence, Disahian interrupted. What is his Sunmong's job? Provincial governor system. Provincial governor system. A person who has the important task of watching over His Majesty the King's carriage, not only committed an affair but also filed a false sick leave. How can we use such a ruthless writer again? Disahian's words are correct. First, King Sejong, who took Disahi side, gave orders to the merchant ships. Go and call Malsing Zhou. Yes, your highness. When King Sejong ordered Zhou Malsing to be brought back, Yang Wijing immediately asked, Your highness, are you going to rewrite Zhou Malsing? Exactly. Disahian responded immediately to King Sejong's answer. Majesty, this will never happen. Convict Zhou Malsing has been sentenced for less than 2 years. It is absolutely impossible to use such a sinner again. Please inform me. What Disahian said makes sense. However, the criminal Zhou Malsing is doing his best to serve his sentence, and it proves it. Merchant Marine, hand this to Disahian. Yes, your highness. The merchant marine received the report from the record office and delivered it to Disahian. Hutta. After receiving and reading the report, Disahian sighed. In the report, the results were clearly organized in graphs and tables. As expected, Disahian's work, and Zhou Malsing was showing the results of his academic work. Hutta. Disahian once again let out a long sigh and waved the white flag. There are results, and the referee has been decided. It's hard to defeat with justification alone. Please do as you wish. Not long after Disahian waved the white flag, Zhou Malsing entered the main hall. When Hyang saw the figure of Zhou Malsing walking and wearing a white robe and a hat, his ears seemed to hear the theme music of a famous Western film composed by Ennio Morricone. Just put a cigarette in your mouth and it's perfect. Zhou Malsing, who walked in front of the restaurant where King Sejong was sitting, giving off a dangerous atmosphere, bowed deeply. Sinner Zhou Malsing, I have come here under the command of His Majesty the Lord. So, is the life of a recorder worth it? Everyone says it's so hard that you die. Zhou Malsing answered King Sejong's question vigorously. Not only did he save a sinner who deserved to die, but he also gave him a chance to pay for his sins, so why should he suffer? Kihi. King Sejong burst out laughing at Zhou Malsing's answer, and the ministers felt their hands and feet shrinking. I didn't go to the archives and organize documents, but just practiced flattery. King Sejong, who was laughing as much as the ministers found it absurd, looked at Zhou Malsing with a straight face. Gwain is trying to give Zhou Malsing, a sinner, a chance. The position of military assistant judge is currently vacant. Can a criminal take on this position and do it properly? In response to King Sejong's question, Zhou Malsing bowed down on the floor and answered in a loud voice. Sinner Zhou Malsing, if you leave it to me, I will do my best to transform myself. King Sejong made a decision based on Zhou Malsing's answer. Please join the class starting tomorrow. However, if you do not do your job properly, you will be dismissed immediately and sent back to the records office. Zhou Malsing threw his head further onto the floor and shouted, I will keep this in mind again and again. I'll take 3 months first. If Byanzhou's work is done properly, he will give us suitable land in Bukshan and build a house again. If not, you wouldn't know what would happen next, right? Zhou Malsing answered King Sejong's question right away. How can you not know? Even if I die, I will die in front of the soldier's desk. Then go and rest. Military record. I am devastated. May your majesty the Lord live forever. 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Zhou Malsing, who sang 3 words for 1,000 years, carefully walked backwards and exited the main hall. Sejong, who saw this, turned to his ministers. Ruler, now that we've filled the space, let's get back to work. It's not long until the first half of the event is over. I receive the spirit. Meanwhile, the officer who recorded all of this added the following. Therefore, the ministers did not oppose the reuse of Zhou Malsing. The officer discusses. Zhu Seng is scary. The next day, Zhou Malsing arrived at the office wearing proper official uniform and immediately went to work on improving the military's problems. As the northern river area expands, communication problems are occurring. The solution to this is a major overhaul of the station. Its maintenance of the station. At Zhou Malsing's suggestion, King Sejong stroked his beard and was lost in thought. The system called Yoquan, or Yokchiam, which started in China and was installed in Joseon during the Three Kingdoms period, was also the most important element in the administrative network. Did the military inspector general have anything in mind? First of all, we need to check the problems that have arisen from the system that has continued so far. Until now, land was given to those living around the station and left to manage the station. Horses to be stationed at the station were also secured by imposing new positions on the station slaves, and government troops. However, this has very serious side effects. According to what Shin confirmed while organizing documents at the record office, the demand for horses increased due to transporting and entertaining envoys traveling between Joseon and Ming. and the price of horses rose, so people began selling all their property to buy horses. Accordingly, even though it has not been long since our country opened, the number of people running away from the station or wandering around is increasing. Note 1. King Sejong's face became serious after hearing Zhou Maoseng's report. That's the problem. So what is the solution? The easiest way is to make Miho near the station your assistant station owner and have him ride the horse. Next comes the supply of official horses from ranches located in each region. God sees that we must choose the second. The second one? Zhou Maoseng continued to insist on its necessity. It may be convenient for now to join us Zhou Yoko, but as time goes by, there will be people who run away or take advantage. If you look at the plan currently being promoted, the purpose is to unify the taxes that the people must pay. Therefore, the first option does not meet the purpose of a lighthouse. That's right. King Sejong and the ministers nodded at Zhou Maoseng's words. When King Sejong and the ministers responded positively, Zhou Maoseng continued speaking. Therefore, it is best to place crown horses raised at ranches located in each region. Kim Jiam raised a counterargument to Zhou Maoseng's words. Although Byongpan's opinion is reasonable, the supply and demand of horses is an issue. Why is supply and demand a problem? Have you forgotten the appeal that came from Jeju Island in January of this year? At Zhou Maoseng's point, Kim Jiam urgently remembered. Zhou Maoseng clicked his tongue at that sight. Nothing has changed, but you forgot. How can a country's favorable record be so weak? Okay. At Zhou Maoseng's blow, Kim Jiam could only let out a groan. Zhou Maoseng, who had silenced Kim Jiam, advised King Sejong. There was an appeal that came to Jeju Island in January and was transferred to the military unit. This is an appeal posted by a Jeju choreographer, and it is related to the horses of Jeju Island. King Sejong, who had been briefly remembering Zhou Maoseng's words, responded. I remember. The idea was to release Jeju Island's horses on a regular basis, right? That's right. In January, a Jeju choreographer filed an appeal. Note 2. Jeju residents rely solely on horses to make a living, so they have a strong will to sell horses to the mainland. However, a problem arose because the sale of mares was prohibited in the country. Male horses are often sold at a low price before they are even 2 years old, and as a result, the male-to-female ratio is not balanced, leading to a decline in the reproductive rate. Therefore, please allow mares to be sold on land regularly every 2 to 3 years. Jeju's problem was also related to Joseon's tribute system. As Jeju Island emerged as a key horse breeding center in Joseon, local officials focused on increasing the number of horses raised. For that reason, the male horses were sent away, leaving only the mares capable of giving birth. As a result, the hardships of Jeju Island residents only worsened. Although most of the land on Jeju Island was pastureland, there were a small number of people who did farming. However, the damage was severe as the ranch horses trampled or ate the rice fields and crops. In the end, the people of Jeju Island gradually gave up farming and became increasingly dependent on livestock farming. As a result, grain shortages became a daily occurrence, and horses raised that way often starved to death. What was even worse was that the growth of horses that did not receive proper nutrition deteriorated. In addition, as male horses in their prime disappeared and only old and decrepit stallions remained, inbreeding became frequent as breeding was repeated, resulting in the overall deterioration of Jeju horses. The saying, no matter how good the breed of horse is, if it gives birth to a foal on Jeju Island, its size gets smaller and smaller, has almost become a common belief. This was a disaster brought about by the short-sighted decisions of local officials and residents who were only focused on performance. When Sejong remembered, Zhou Maoseng immediately spoke. Currently, horses in Jeju Island are in poor condition due to excessive herding. We need to reduce the number of horses raised on Jeju Island to an appropriate level, increase the number of horses raised on inland ranches to properly grow horses, and supply these horses to government offices, stations, and the military to meet demand. In response to Zhou Maoseng's remonstrance, King Sejong looked at the other ministers. Are there enough ranches in the inland areas? Kim Jiam immediately answered King Sejong's question. Following the decision made by His Majesty in the early days of Jianjiang, we are expanding livestock farms across the country. However, there is not enough pasture land to do as Byongpan said. According to what we confirmed while organizing in the records, there is a shortage of pastoral land right now, but the pastoral land is expected to gradually expand in the future. In response to Zhou Maoseng's counterargument, King Sejong looked at Kim Jiam. Kim Jiam looked at the distant mountain in response to the unspoken question posed by King Sejong. Zhou Maoseng continued to propose policies. If the lack of inland pasture land becomes a problem, hiring noble Jurchen tribe members is another method. If you entrust the raising of horses to the Jurchen people, you get two benefits. The Jurchen people are known for being good at raising horses. We can get good horses, and the Jurchen people can be cured more quickly because they are guaranteed to survive. Can you trust the aftershocks? If we continue to be on guard like that, the Jurchens will never become our people. Let's say that's the case. However, although we are currently expanding the ranch according to the scenery, there are limits. The limit is, have you forgotten Dongjin? According to Dongjin's plan, once the annexation of the Duman River Basin is over, we will move east and advance to the Great Forest. The land you get in the process is not land, but shit? The ministers continued to put forward counter-arguments, but based on records, Zhou Maoseng's counterattacks continued to result in defeat. In the end, Sejong came to a conclusion. It seems that Bayongpan's opinion is right, so make policy decisions based on Bayongpan's thoughts. I follow your orders. Zhou Maoseng expressed his gratitude in a loud voice for King Sejong's decision. I am devastated. The officer who recorded all of this added. In this way, the decision was made. The officer discusses what happened to Bayongpan at the record center. Meanwhile, while Hyang was watching the verbal exchange between Zhou Maoseng and the ministers, a memory suddenly came to mind. Come to think of it, Odabi, why are these guys still here? I asked if I could find a horse. Do you plan to start by mating him and bringing him back? When Hyang was thinking about Odabi for the first time in a long time, the Odabi family was standing at the crossroads between life and death. If you go a little further, you will be in Joseon. Be a little more strong. Yes. The captain responded to the leader's command and shouted to the crew. Shoot your bow. Bow. At the captain's command, the crew fired flaming arrows at the pursuing pirate ships. It was not only the merchant ships belonging to the Odabi family that fired arrows at the chasing pirate ships. The accompanying merchant ships of the Azram family were also desperately trying to block the pirates' attacks. The pirates were just as desperate. Catch it quickly. Boss, if you go a little further, you will reach the patrol area of the Joseon Navy. It's dangerous. Wang Jiehak, the leader of the pirate fleet, gritted his teeth and responded to his subordinate's report. I know. However, if we catch those ships properly, we won't have to imitate Japanese pirates for the next 2 to 3 years. Although they dressed like Japanese, they were actually Chinese. Shush. It's a fiery arrow. What are you doing? Turn off the lights. We shoot fire arrows too. As the merchant ships and pirate fleets of the Otabi and Azram families were in desperate pursuit, smoke rose from the far northern sky. Puff poop. As multicolored clouds exploded in the air, Wang Jihak's subordinate shouted, Boss, it's the Joseon Navy. Damn it. Turn the boat around. Pirate ships turn their bows. Are you sure? I'm sure. Upon hearing the captain's report, Odabi ran to the stern and inspected the pirate ships. The pirate ships that had been chasing them with deadly intent until a moment ago were turning sharply and turning their ships around. That's good, but why? Odabi, who survived by using his sword, was more curious than relieved. I think it has something to do with the smoke that exploded in the sky earlier. That smoke? The captain's words reminded Odabi of the 5-colored smoke cloud that had exploded in the sky just moments before. What on earth is that? While Odabi could not hide his doubts, a sailor watching from the top of the mast shouted, Ships are coming from the north. At the sailor's words, the leader and captain rushed to the bow. Just as the sailor said, ships with yellow sails were approaching them from afar. It's not a junk ship, right? The square-shaped ships were waving 5-colored flags with various beasts drawn on them. As the mysterious fleet approached, the tension of the head and captain of the Otabi family, as well as the crew, increased even more. Big. As the ship in question got closer and closer, the crew of the merchant ship became more and more intimidated. The dhow they were riding was also a large ship called Bagala, mule, but the size of the approaching ship was bigger than theirs. To be precise, their ship was longer, but the ship in question was taller. It's definitely not a famous ship. The shape is completely different. Then is it a Zipangu? Chipanga doesn't have a ship that big. Then which country is this ship from? The leader, feeling frustrated, was angry, but the captain also had nothing to say. I do not know. After a while, a small ship disembarked from the mysterious fleet that was approaching a certain distance and approached. As we got close enough to distinguish the colors of the people on the boat, the elder who was riding with us shouted in joy. It's the Joseon army. Stripe. It's Joseon. Joseon? In response to the leader's question, the elder nodded deeply. Yes, I'm sure it's the Joseon military uniform I saw the last time I went to Joseon. Then why didn't you recognize the boat? The elder answered the leader's question with a puzzled expression. At that time, I had never seen a ship that big. At the elder's answer, the leader looked at the ships presumed to be Joseon ships with surprised eyes. You mean they built those ships in just over a year? Enough to form a fleet? The captain added to the leader's muttering. As soon as they saw that ship, the pirates ran away. If you look at that, it's been a while since those ships dominated this sea. The leader nodded at the captain's words. It would be right to see it that way. While the leader and the captain were talking, the Joseon soldier on a small boat that was just a stone's throw away raised an unusual-looking object to his mouth and shouted, "Where do these ships come from?" The interpreter on board the ship answered the Joseon soldier's question in Mingu. "I am a merchant from Aden. I brought the items requested by the Prince of Joseon." In response to the interpreter's shout, the Korean soldiers on the small boat talked about something and shouted again. "Wait a moment. I understand." After that, a short confirmation process took place with small boats making several round trips, and the Joseon military's decision was made. "Follow me. We will protect you." "I understand. Thank you." When the boat turned around, not only the leader and captain, but also the crew all breathed a sigh of relief. Whoa, now I'm alive. That's right. In that way, the merchant ships of the Otabi and Azram families, fortunately not a single ship was lost, began to return to Joseon, surrounded by 3 Joseon ships. Of course, in the process, the Arab sailors all fainted as they watched the Joseon ships circling on the spot. Is that possible? It's my first time seeing this too. Seeing the captain answering with a confused expression, the leader muttered to himself again. What kind of country is Joseon? Meanwhile, the sailors, who had found some leisure time as safety was secured, were observing Joseon's front lines moving side by side from a distance. The ship is very special. It seems to be shorter than our ship, but it is much taller. As the sailors said, the Panoxian operated by the Joseon Navy was quite tall. If we estimate the position of the Joseon Navy behind the wall on the side of the hull, the roof of the stern cabin, the highest part of the hull of the large dhow carrying Arab merchants, and the first floor deck of the Joseon ship were almost at the same height. Among the sailors who were observing the Joseon battle lines, the older and more experienced sailors nodded. It would be difficult to give up the ship without at least suffering quite a bit. "Young master, isn't that a large arrow sticking out on the side of that wire?" "Arrow?" The sailor, who was called Inspiration at the young sailor's point, narrowed his eyes and observed the Joseon battle lines. "Indeed, it's an arrow, but why are you using something only for siege warfare?" The old man, who was tilting his head as he looked at the Taejun loaded in the general's gun, looked even more uncertain. "What kind of crossbow do you use that makes the gap so narrow?" Sailors were not the only ones who observed Joseon's battle lines. The head of the Otabi family and the captain were also observing the front lines, and exchanged opinions after discovering an object believed to be the crossbow. "It won't be a crossbow." The captain observed with his eyes as wide as possible and came to a conclusion. "The spacing is narrow and the arrow position is too low to be considered a crossbow." "Then which is the most likely?" The captain, who was thinking deeply about the leader's question, gave a short answer. "Cannon." "Cannon?" The leader briefly questioned the captain's words and shook his head. "If you count the arrows that are visible right now, it looks like there are 10. So that means that that ship was equipped with at least 20 cannons. Even those Catholic pagans don't carry that much." In response to the leader's words, the captain asked back, "Aren't they Catholic pagans?" "Her." The leader muttered in astonishment. "There are crazy people carrying more than 20 cannons on each ship? Is there any gunpowder left?" Meanwhile, a war of words was taking place in the Joseon fleet. Are they really merchants who received orders from the royal court? The officer in charge of civil affairs answered the question of Mokpo Manho, who led the squadron. "The commercial license has been confirmed. Isn't the problem that we have never seen merchants who receive that trade license in the jurisdiction of Wuswao, Jiala?" A subordinate officer responded to Mokpo Manho's point. "That is true, but licenses with the same name had already been issued to merchants traveling to and from the Shandong region, and the official seal on the document was that of the government." After hearing the answer, Mokpo Manho sighed slightly and concluded, "I'll figure it out if I go back first, and then send Jiangjiwai. By the way," Mokpo Manho turned the topic to its main business. "It's a shame I missed those damn pirates. It's getting harder and harder to catch these days, because as soon as we fire the Sinjijin, they immediately run away. Sinjijin is useful in many ways, but it has this side effect. That's right. In response to Mokpo Manho's complaints, the subordinate officer nodded and added, "There is also a problem with this Panoxian. As Hyang intervened in history, not only weapons were created that quickly advanced several levels. You have to make useful things and use them. Weapons that originally existed in history were also created according to the decision of the village. Of course, it was not the original item. A representative example was Sinjijin. Among these new devices, Hyang developed the small new device for two purposes. One was a long-range suppression weapon using gunpowder as a propellant, as intended, and the other was for signaling purposes. Explosives mixed with gunpowder, several minerals, and dyes were loaded into the front compartment of the paper barrel attached to the bottom of the arrow, causing smoke of various colors to explode during the day and flames of various colors to explode at night. And we made it possible to understand various situations at once by the type of color and the order of explosion. The military was very fond of the small signal device that was created in this way, and the combination of a monoscope and a small signal device that Hyang created by replacing Pietro and Raphael greatly expanded the scope of the Joseon military's activities. In the case of cavalrymen engaged in grappling with the Jurchen tribes, the cavalrymen who went to the outpost were useful. However, it was the naval forces that made the most useful use of the small signal device. So Sinjijin wasn't the only thing that was useful. The Daisen mechanism with a warhead, made entirely the same as the Bijiok Jinshinro except that the body was made of paper instead of iron, was also a masterpiece. The power is half that of Bijiok Jinshinro, but the range is 250 paces, about 300 m, longer than the maximum range of Bijiok Jinshinro, creating a monster with a vicious range of 800 steps, about 960 m. When the subordinate officer mentioned the Panoxian they were on, Mokpo Manho nodded. "Yes, I like everything about this Panoxian, but the only thing I don't like is the slow pace. Thanks to this, pirates now run away as soon as they see Sinjijin's signal or Panoxian." Panoxian, whose scent was built ahead of history, satisfied the Navy. The high and large hull, which was built from the beginning with the assumption of mass operation of artillery, could not easily be overcome even by pirate ships with pirates or pirates approaching. And arrow and artillery attacks using the height difference were able to destroy enemy ships from a greater distance than before. In addition, due to the increased strength as well as the increased size, there were cases where ships carrying pirates and Japanese pirates were completely destroyed in collisions. However, the Panoxian also had a fatal flaw in that it was slow. The hull, which appears rectangular when viewed from above, was useful in coastal waters, but speed problems arose when going out to sea. Thanks to this, the Japanese pirates and pirates, who initially looked down on them and attacked them, but were greatly defeated, turned around and ran away as soon as they saw the Panoxian. Of course, there were some Japanese pirates who believed in their own speed and attacked them, but after seeing them shattered by shells coming from farther away than the arrows could reach, there were no more courageous Japanese pirates. Mokpo Manho licked his lips and turned his head. "I hear a rumor that high-performance artillery has been developed, but we need more ships that are faster and stronger than guns. With the Crown Prince and outstanding people in Area 51, good results will come soon." Mokpo Manho shook his head at the words of his subordinate officer. Area 51? There are many people who are crazy about artillery, but there are no people who are crazy about ships. That's the problem. However, Mokpo Manho was wrong. If I had heard the scent, it would have responded like this. "You give Abamar a budget. Even these days, I get scolded at least once a day, saying, 'You bastard.'" After 5 days of sailing, the merchant ships of the Otabi and Asram families arrived at Jeolla Suying and dropped anchor. "I have sent Jangai to Hanseong, so I am asking you to wait a few days." "I will do that." "I asked if you needed anything." In response to the interpreter's question, the leader turned to the captain. The captain answered the unspoken question right away. "First, just ask for food." "All right." While the reply came from Hanseong, the heads of the Odabi family and captains of merchant ships used their spare time to visit Jeolajwa swimming pool. It's a military base, so don't wander around carelessly. "Yes. Then, can I take a look at the marketplace outside?" It just so happens that today is the market opening day." After receiving permission from Kim Jiljiza, the commander of Joseon, the head of the Odabi family led the people outside and headed to the marketplace. The head's face was full of disappointment when he saw the market. "This is it. Nothing special. Compared to the Chinese market I saw once, it can't be called a market." The leader, who was looking at the goods in the market while complaining, stopped at one place. "That? The place where the head's gaze was directed was to a small guest house. White porcelain and glasses were sparkling on the table where people had eaten. How do such great things end up in such an underdeveloped place? The unexpected disharmony threw the leader into confusion. What on earth is this country called Joseon? The leader's confusion after looking around the marketplace became even more intense when he heard the captain's reports. I didn't see the inside of the Joseon naval base, but I looked at the sailing fronts. Not only the ships that escorted us, but also slightly smaller ships were equipped with artillery. Entire? The captains gave short answers to the leader's question, which was full of disbelief. Everything. Huh. The leader took a long breath in response to the captain's answers. Seeing the head like that, the most experienced captain, the captain of the ship on which the head of the Otabi family rode. Suleiman added something. Of course, the ships equipped with nearly 20 cannons are of the same class as the ships that escorted us. Small ships were equipped with 2 to 4 guns. Smaller ships did not carry artillery at all. The leader shook his head at the captain's report. I have no idea what this country is like. If you look at the market during the day, it is as underdeveloped as a market in a village far away from Aden. There are expensive china and glasses on the tables in the alley restaurants, and the Navy's battleships are loaded with expensive cannons. What kind of country is this Joseon? Suleiman answered the leader's words succinctly. I do not know. It's a country I also can't understand. Seeing the leader in confusion, an elder who had visited Joseon last time came forward. Hassan and said, who work as officials in this Joseon dynasty, said that it is developing rapidly as the current king ascends the throne and the prince who will succeed the throne is decided. It was like that. The leader, who lightly nodded his head at the elder's answer, sighed softly. Whoa, I need to reflect on this. I was disappointed just by looking at the market outside the base. Unless you've seen the ceramics and glassware. The leader reflected deeply on himself. When the leader learned that the Joseon goods brought by the elder were of great value, he boarded the ship with great hopes. We started a little late, but let's do our best. There's a lot of money at stake. It took some time to obtain the good breed of horses requested by the Prince of Joseon, but the chieftain was not particularly worried. The merchant fleet that departed from Aden endured great hardships and passed through the Malay Strait and the South China Sea, which were teeming with pirates. The leader was disappointed when he saw the Joseon market that had arrived after such a narrow crisis. When he was young, the chieftain, who had lived in China during the Yuan Empire period, especially Hangzhou, could not help but be disappointed when he saw the shabby marketplace of Joseon compared to the splendid culture of Hangzhou. Is there really anything worth money in a country like this? Wasn't that last time just luck? I never thought the country right next to China would be this shabby. However, the moment the leader saw the small items hidden in the shabby place, he had to change his mind. A guy with the goal of making his family big. This guy is aiming for a grand prize. I've been telling others not to be fooled by appearances, but I've actually forgotten. He was a leader who deeply reflected on his mistakes. 5 days later, the Kimjil who received the Bidap that had returned from Hanseong delivered the news through an interpreter. This is an order to leave as soon as the sun rises tomorrow and come to Hanseong. Our Navy ships will escort and guide you. The chieftain was pleased with the words of the Kimjil. Thank you. Once the departure date was set, the crew of the fleet prepared for departure all night long. The next morning, at the bow of the ship heading north, the leader made a firm determination. You can't make a mistake twice. After several days of sailing, the merchant ships arrived in Jamolpo and began unloading their cargo. Because there was a large amount of cargo unloaded from 6 large dhows, the head of the Otabi family requested a cart from a family living in Joseon waiting at the dock. I will prepare soon. Please do me a favor. While the cart was being arranged, the unloaded cargo was meticulously checked by Hojo. The official of Hojo, who recorded the list, quantity, and price of the cargo, diligently flicked the abacus and said something to the translator. The interpreter again spoke in Chinese to the interpreter at the top, and the interpreter relayed the contents to the head. I pay 40 taels of gold as customs duties. 40 niang of gold? Even though it was a product brought at the request of the Prince of Joseon? To be precise, the only thing the Hyang asked for was a stallion. But the chieftain was reluctant to pay taxes, so he emphasized the phrase, the prince's request. However, despite such emphasis, Hojo's officials remained steadfast. In the end, Hojo, the officials, the interpreter, and the interpreter at the top began to argue. The quarrel calmed down to some extent when a relative who had gone to collect the cart arrived. If you look at the license here, there is an item that says you have to pay a tariff at a certain rate. Even though these are items and horses brought at the request of the Prince of Joseon? Yes. Her. The leader, whose merchant temperament was activated, looked dejected. Seeing that, the elder comforted the leader. You think of it as an investment. Invest. The leader groaned at the elder's words. Okay, you should think so. But what kind of officials are so inflexible? What? It may be inflexible, but it's not corrupt, right? Okay. The interpreter who was listening to the conversation between the chief and the elders relayed the words verbatim to the interpreter. This was because the interpreter also had the same mindset as the leader. The interpreter smiled and answered the interpreter's words. Have you ever heard of a recorder? Recordist? After a short quarrel, the head of the Otabi family, who paid a huge sum of 40 gold niang, or 400 ducats, headed to Hanseong to soothe his bitter stomach. The head of the Otabi family led the people to the Hohoan collective residence south of Hanseong. When the leader of the Odabi Gamo, who was dressed as a woman, was recovering from his illness, Hassan and Said, who had retired, visited the leader. Brothers Hassan and Said meet the chieftain. Seeing Hassan and Said politely but happily bowing, the leader also welcomed them in return. I am so glad that Haim's children have grown up so well. In particular, the side is better than the last time I came to Aden. You can't see it? Is he sick? The leader asked, full of worry, as he saw his dead brother with dark spots under his eyes. It's no big deal. I have a lot of work these days. Oh my. If you guys are healthy, our family will be strong. So can you give me some medicine? As soon as the leader mentioned the word medicine, Brother Hassan became thoughtful and waved his hands. Oh no. No need for medicine. Thank you for your concern. But there is absolutely no need for medicine. Huh. When the leader expressed doubt, the Hassan brothers' father, Kamed, explained the reason. Among the officials of this Joseon dynasty, the use of yak, or tonic medicine, is a forbidden word. Huh. The leader could not hide his doubts at Haim's words. In recent years, among government officials, the act of giving medicine or tonics as a gift had the same meaning as you should die. When a superior gives medicine to a subordinate, it means, I'll beat you to death. And when a superior gives medicine to a subordinate, it means, I'll fuck you soon. After the brief commotion subsided, Brother Hassan delivered the document to the chieftain. This is an order to come into the palace tomorrow. Tomorrow? Okay. From now on, will I be able to enter the palace every time I come to Joseon? Hassan gave a negative answer to the question of the leader, who was very excited, thinking that there might be an unknown opportunity. No. This time, he brought the things that the crown prince had requested, and since the head of state came himself, he called it as a courtesy. Next time, you will probably talk to a person in charge of the government office called Hojo. Is it? It's a bit disappointing. TSK. The leader couldn't hide his disappointment at Hassan's answer and quenched his appetite. The next day, the properly dressed leader headed to the palace accompanied by the Hassan brothers and elders. These are the signatures that have been received from His Majesty the Lord. Wang Waman opened at the gesture of the gatekeeper, who received and checked the document handed out by Hassan, and the merchants walked inside. The eyes of the gatekeeper and his subordinates, who were watching with curious faces, soon opened wide. What? That? Please, Your Majesty, please. The merchants politely bowed to the merchant ship. You worked hard to get to Wanro, Long Road. Take it easy. The merchants who heard King Sejong's order through Hassan cautiously stood up. You're young. So you're active? After briefly checking King Sejong's face, the leader politely introduced himself. Mansour Muhammad Kamal al-Otabi, head of the Otabi family, is honored to meet His Majesty the King of Korea. King Sejong, who received Mansour's greeting through Hassan, smiled and responded. Nice to meet you too. Chief Mansour, please straighten your posture. Thank you. After the short meeting, King Sejong went straight to the main topic. I heard that the crown prince brought the horses he requested. Did you arrive safely? Mansour immediately answered King Sejong's question. Yes, we were exhausted and emaciated from the long voyage, but we brought everyone back safely. Can you see it now? I've put it up outside the door now, so you can see it right away. At Mansour's answer, anticipation began to appear on the faces of King Sejong and the ministers who followed him. In particular, it was Zhou Malsing who was looking forward to it the most. Bring it with you. As soon as King Sejong's order was given, the Gunjong gate opened and horses came in. What is that? That's a horse. The ministers who were watching the horses coming in through the open door became fixated on the horses coming in last. The scent was equally surprising. What? a horse that a king might ride at the end of this century. The horses that came in ahead were also 1 foot taller, approximately 34 centimeters, than the horses of the Jeju horses or the Jurchen tribe. However, the 4 horses that came in last were 1 foot taller than those horses. When the horses arrived, King Sejong came down from his throne and began to look at the horses in person. He's big, but he looks really sleek. Mansoor responded to King Sejong's generous evaluation with an expression full of pride. This is a horse that few breeds can compete with in terms of running speed, endurance, and everything else. I see. What does Byongpan look like? Byongpan and Jo Malsang bowed their heads and answered King Sejong's question. Although it is thin, if you look at its muscles, it looks like it would be difficult to compete with Jeju horse. Compared to what the Jurchen people said, it looks superior to the horses of the Jurchen tribe. Of course, I'll have to check it properly later. Right. And Sejong walked towards the large horse that was the most curious question. I have never seen such a huge horse in my life. Mansoor responded immediately to Sejong's evaluation. It was my first time seeing a dwarf too. In the process of looking for horses, I got horses from Catholic merchants. They said it came from a land called France. King Sejong expressed doubts about Mansoor's answer. Huh? I heard that you and the people who believe in the Catholic religion are on bad terms? You can't stop doing business just because you don't have a good relationship, right? There are merchants who don't get along even though they believe in the same God. And there are merchants who get along well even though they have different beliefs. King Sejong burst out laughing at Mansoor's answer. Haha, this is a foolish question and a wise answer. After evaluating a horse, Sejong looked at other products. However, King Sejong's expression became increasingly dull as he examined the products Mansoor had brought. There are a lot of luxuries. Mansoor, who heard King Sejong's words through Hassan, asked Hassan with a serious face. Doesn't the king of Joseon like luxury? The ministers of this country hate it when the king enjoys more luxury than this. Of course, they enjoyed luxury, but they suffered a blow. Mansoor was deep in thought at Hassan's answer, which he had suppressed. Most of the products he brought were spices such as pepper and turmeric. There are very few people who don't like spices, especially nobles who buy them and eat them even if they pay a lot of money. Mansoor, who continued calculating various things, asked Hassan, don't people in this kingdom eat spices like pepper and turmeric? We eat indigenous spices that have similar effects. Imported spices like pepper are very expensive. You don't hate pepper? I can't eat it because it's expensive. How much does it usually cost? How much do you pay for the headdress? In response to Hassan's question, Mansoor told him the price of the pepper he purchased in Aden. After hearing Mansoor's answer, Hassan answered briefly. Multiply that by 20 times. That's the lowest price. OMG. Mansoor, who was greatly surprised, suddenly had a brilliant idea. If you buy pepper in bulk from Aden, you can buy it cheaper than the market price. It was said that Koreans do not hate pepper either. If so, you can monopolize the market if you don't hand it over in the middle and receive a little less information. Reduced interest can be replaced by increased sales. No, you can make bigger gains. The conclusion was that Bakritami was the best option, but Mansoor could not come to that conclusion easily. This was because there was an obstacle to him, the merchants of the Azram family. I can't do it. Hassan, can you get permission from the king of Joseon to ask for some time? Why are you doing that? Mansoor answered, looking at the Azram family merchant behind him. I have someone I need to negotiate with first. Hassan responded to Mansoor's words with a serious face. I will try my best, but if I do something wrong, I may become a sinner. A sinner? Is it polite for a mere merchant to ask the king of a country to postpone negotiations? Joseon is a country that values courtesy. If I make a mistake, not only I but the leader can be imprisoned. This, Mansoor, who suddenly found himself in a situation where he couldn't do anything, looked embarrassed. It's a mistake. I thought I could make money, so I started working recklessly without doing any proper research. This is my big mistake. According to Mansoor's own fault, this incident was Mansoor's mistake. The fact that he only thought about the cases of European merchants and Chinese merchants, who opened their pockets without even asking questions when it came to spices, and brought products mainly containing spices was driving him into crisis. Meanwhile, Kiang, who was watching the situation, made a suggestion to Sejong. Abama, is it okay for Soja to negotiate this time? The crown prince? Sejong, who had been thinking about Hyang's request for a while, asked with an expression full of worry. The last time I dealt with the authors, there was a lot of talk behind their backs. The crown prince of a country comes forward and bargains. It is a matter of national interest. I want Soja and Hopan to take on this task together. Kim Jiam, who was listening to the conversation between Sejong and Hyang from behind, cried out inwardly. Why me? I still have a lot of documents to process. Sejong, who heard Hyang's words, looked back at Kim Jiam, not sure if he knew how Kim Jiam felt. And that too with a very kind smile. Hopan, can you help the crown prince? There was a smile on his face, but in response to Sejong's command disguised as a question, Kim Jiam said, No, I answered, holding back the words that were about to come out. I can't. I'll do my best. I will trust Hopan. I will do my best. Sejong, who entrusted the transaction to Kim Jiam and Hyang, spoke to Mansoor through Hassan. This transaction involved coordination, so Gwaine also participated. However, Gwaine was busy with state affairs and left the transaction to the crown prince and the governor Hojo, so I hope that a good deal will be concluded. Thank you so much. After hearing Hassan's words, Mansoor felt relieved and expressed his sincere gratitude. As Sejong and the ministers left, Mansoor took a long breath. Woda, Mansoor, who took a long breath and relieved his tightness, asked Hassan, Is that prince that prince? That's right. And next to him is the country's finance minister. Right. The minister of finance's face looks stern, but the prince still looks young, so he must have been named minister of finance. I just need to be careful with that finance minister. Hassan warned Mansoor about his judgment based solely on the face of Hyang, who was still just a boy. If you think like that, you will suffer great loss. I will not explain further because I am also an official of this country. But if you relax even a little, you will be in big trouble. In response to Hassan's warning, Mansoor looked at the scent's face once again. Mansoor looked at Hassan once again, seeing the boy's scent still lingering in his scent. However, Mansoor, seeing Hassan's expression even more tense than when the king was present, muttered without realizing it. Captain Hopan, do you have a list of the items they brought with them? Yes. At Hopan's brief response, the Hojo official who was waiting quickly held out a book containing a list. After receiving the book from Hopan, Kang looked at the list. Let's see. Pocho, pepper, turmeric, curcuma. My mind was spinning furiously as my fingertips stopped at the turmeric listed on the list. If it's turmeric, it's curry? Curry rice is good. For a moment, there are no potatoes, no onions. Wait, I know that the history of onions is quite old, right? Was teacher Samcheonpo like that? Unless they are from the New World, most vegetables have been in China since the Tang Dynasty. I'll have to check later. After organizing the turmeric, Kiang continued to check the list. Most of it, no. Everything except the horse's spice? Why? Kiang thought to himself thoughtfully. According to the report, the ship they came on wasn't that big, right? In that case, it is certain that the horses and the hay they eat would have taken up most of the space, and in that case, you would also need to pack small but valuable items, so spices would be perfect. Spices are expensive in both the East and the West. Sent nodded as he looked through the list and stopped at the last item. Black bean tea? What is this? This is my first time hearing it. Hundo. Yes, sir. What is this black bean tea? Black bean tea? This is my first time hearing it too. Hassan paused for a moment and asked Mansoor a question. After hearing Mansoor's answer, Hassan responded to the incense. It is an ingredient for making a drink called kawa. Kawa? It is also called kappa. Kappa? Capra? Kiang, who was thinking deeply about Hassan's explanation, suddenly shouted, Coffee! Kiang's face was full of joy. It's coffee. Come on. I thought it would be impossible to taste it at least until the ocean fleet was built. Like most Koreans living in the 21st century, Kiang was a caffeine addict. Besides, doesn't it have a good effect? It would be a good gift for ministers who struggle with drowsiness. Of course, green tea could have been an alternative considering only the caffeine, but the strong taste of caffeine and the unique aroma of coffee were irreplaceable. Hassan, who saw Hyang's expression full of joy, asked Lo Yang with a face full of doubts, Sir, do you know kahua? Oops. In response to Hassan's question, Hyang hurriedly adjusted his expression and answered, I found out about it through a book. I was curious about the true nature of the tea as it was said to have many health benefits, so how could I not be glad to see it in real life? Is that so? There was still curiosity in his mind, but Hassan stopped asking questions there. There will be a day when it will be released. Hassan committed himself to interpreting the conversation between Hyang and Mansoor, vowing to write it down in a book he was secretly recording. Although it is a story from a long time ago, the book with the long title Various Questions Regarding the Crown Prince's Relocation, written by Hassan, became the starting point for all kinds of controversies and conspiracy theories among historians in the East and the West as soon as it was discovered. Meanwhile, Mansoor persuaded the merchants of the Azram family. So, the situation is not good. So, I would like to cut the name of this spice and sell it. Cut off this door. Rajab, who accompanied him as the representative of the Azram family, looked embarrassed. Mansoor continued to persuade with that expression. Wouldn't we be able to see greater benefits if the number of people visiting this gate increased instead of cutting it down? So how much are you going to cut it? The most I received was 10 times, but I want to get it to be about 6 times. Good. Let's do it. However, I will participate in the negotiations. Mansoor thought about Rajab's words for a moment, and then accepted his opinion. Please do so. Stripe. Let's negotiate the price. Okay, let's go. At Hassan's words, Mansoor walked to the village with Rajab. Huh? The number of people has increased? Who is the author? Mansoor, who heard the question about the incense, spoke to Hassan. I didn't have enough ships, so I borrowed some ships from the Azram family. Hassan slightly changed Mansoor's answer and reported it to the governor. They say they were short on ships, so they borrowed ships from other merchants. Kang's eyes sharpened at Hassan's answer. I don't think you just rented a boat. The commercial license is only granted to the Otabi family to which you belong. This is your first time making a formal transaction. Are you planning on cheating from the first transaction? Oh no. Hassan answered in an urgent voice, but Hyang continued speaking in a cold voice. Tell this clearly to the head of your family. What were you thinking, trying to cheat from the very first transaction? Mansoor, who heard Hyang's words through Hassan, hastily came up with an excuse, and Hassan also desperately made an excuse. Truly, you say you didn't have enough ships, so you just borrowed ships from other merchants. We just rented a boat, so why is another merchant joining us? The fact that the author was involved in this situation means that he did not just lend the boat. Are you looking down on yourself? Is the person who is the head of your family funny, and is this country called Joseon funny? When asked about the scent, Mansoor immediately knelt down on the floor and responded, Absolutely not. It's just that I thought this commercial trip would be a big opportunity, so I overexerted myself and ended up reaching out to other merchants, and those merchants followed me because I was worried too. After hearing Mansoor's answer through Hassan, Kyang folded his arms and glared at Mansoor with a fierce face. Seeing that, Hassan knelt down next to him and made an excuse. Lowering, the leader had no intention of deceiving you. You are just being greedy to get a bigger reputation. Kyang, who was glaring at Hassan and Mansoor in silence, gestured. Good night. Let's just believe it for now. Get up. I am devastated. When Mansoor and Hassan got up, the scent turned. Well then, let's talk about the deal. Captain, do you have a suitable room in Hojo? Yes. After hearing Hopan's answer, Kyang ordered Hassan. Tell them to follow me. Yes. Mansoor, who heard the incense order through Hassan, sighed and looked back at Rajab. It won't be easy. As Mansoor expected, bargaining was not easy. First, let's start with Hojo, which is familiar to Joseon as well. Yes, Prince. Once the first item to be negotiated was decided, the real bargaining began. Okay, how much do you want to charge? Please explain based on the units of Ming Dynasty, not your traditional units. At the Hyang's command, Mansoor calculated the approximate price and told the Hyang. Is it cheap? Kim Jiam answered Hyang's question right away. It's half the price from Minghua. It's half. Chief Mansoor, how much do you sell it to the merchants of Ming Dynasty? I understand that Myeongguk is purchased directly from India. Listening to Kim Jiam's answer, Kyang began to play the abacus diligently. As far as I know, pepper was more expensive than the same weight of gold. Well, Mr. Samchiampo questioned, was it really like that? But it was quite possible in Joseon, where pepper could be obtained only through smuggling. Even though we opened a store in Shandong, pepper is still an expensive product, isn't it? Before Joseon opened a branch in Shandong, the price of pepper, which the Joseon people called hocho, was enormous. The price was so high that not only wealthy noblemen, but even the royal family had to make up their minds to obtain pepper. The high price of pepper did not fall much even after the trading company opened in Shandong. This was because merchants from Ming Dynasty and Joseon made profit. When the economy grows and people have more money in their pockets, They immediately try to change food, clothing, and shelter. Kiang was confident that Koreans would increasingly look for pepper. If you look at it now, thanks to the flood control work, droughts and floods have decreased, and crops have improved. And now that we can afford it, our projects are selling like hotcakes. Kiang, who was reminded of the economic situation of the Joseon people through information received from Hojo's monopoly outlets spread across the country, made a strong decision. I don't know about other spices, but pepper should be included in the exclusive product. Otherwise, speculation will occur and prices will go crazy. Then, let's hit it. After reaching a conclusion, the scent began to attack. 30% of that price. 30% is ridiculous. Are you saying we shouldn't do business? Mansoor argued, taking a stance as if he wanted to leave immediately, but Hyang did not back down either. No, it wasn't just that he didn't back down. He questioned him again and again. How much profit did you make from the Korean products you took last time? I made a double profit. Huh? Hyang looked at Hasan with a nonsensical expression on his face. Didn't you say that your family is a family of deep-rooted merchants? You're right, but you only made twice the profit? Do you really think we should continue doing business with your family? Hearing Hyang's words, Hasan immediately knelt down on the floor and shouted, Here comes the emperor. Please do not throw away God's family. Please inform me. Hasan, what on earth is going on? Suddenly, Hasan knelt down and shouted, and Mansoor, embarrassed, asked Hasan. Hasan quickly answered Mansoor's question. He is thinking of cutting off business with our family. The last time I brought it from Joseon, I only got twice as much money. Why is that? If it's the product you brought back last time, even newbie merchants in Joseon will get a lot of attention. Even for new merchants. Mansoor sighed at Hasan's words. What had been overlooked under the pressure of the power of the Sindwa family became a shackle. Hasan, please take a seat. Yes, sir. After putting Hasan back on the chair, Hyang pressured Mansoor. Hyang took out a gold pin from his sleeve and pointed at the Yua pattern as he continued speaking. Hasan may have said it, but our Joseon products, especially those with the Yua emblem like this one, are products whose quality is guaranteed by the state. Hyang, who explained the value of the peach blossom pattern imprinted on a gold pin, urged Mansoor. These products, no matter how new to the merchant, returned from the Ming and Japanese countries, leaving at least 4 times more in print. But I was only able to leave a double mark? What should I think about this? Hasan told Mansoor exactly what he had said. Do you really want to leave that much of a mark? Mansoor asked Hasan with an expression of disbelief. Hasan answered Mansoor's question right away. It's true. In particular, the value of products from workshops belonging to the royal family is enormous. According to rumors, there are even rumors going around that in Japan, people are willing to go to the sword to get a chance to buy items from the royal workshop. After a long sigh, Mansoor got up from his chair and knelt in front of the incense. I asked the prince for forgiveness. Please forgive my incompetence. After hearing Mansoor's words through Hasan, Hyang opened his mouth. Mansoor of the Otabi family, please stand up and take your seat. Yes. For now, the steamship has been subdued. The 8th ridge has been crossed. The scent that overpowered Mansoor's steam began to harden. Even though it is 30%, it is probably a lot more than the original cost. If you take this to Joseon's products and sell it properly, you can reap profits several times that amount. What do you think? But 30% is too little. Do you really think so? What do you think will happen if the price becomes that low? When asked about the fragrance, Mansoor began to break into a cold sweat. The little prince was already talking about an idea he had praised to himself as being brilliant. Scary. Is this what you meant when you said, don't look down on me just because I'm young? However, Mansoor could not accept it right away. This was because if you start to be dragged around like in the case with the Sindwa family, it will inevitably end in loss. The transaction was ultimately a battle for dominance. Please pay 50%. Considering the risk, it should be 50%. Risk? Couldn't experienced merchants like you be able to prepare for natural disasters to some extent in advance? It is possible to prepare for natural disasters as long as they are not in the middle of a vast ocean. But the problem is pirates. A pirate. When Mansoor mentioned pirates, the scent clouded his words. Were the pirates of the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean older than the pirates of the Caribbean? I'll look at it up to 40%. Tisk. Mansoor gritted his teeth at Hyang's suggestion. 400 is fine, but pirates are a problem. There's no way you'll be as lucky as this time. How do I? At that moment, An idea struck Mansour's mind like a thunderbolt. Mansour urgently presented a new proposal to Hyang. Give me the cannons used by the Joseon Navy. Then I will agree to 40%. Stripe? Hassan was startled by Mansour's words and called Mansour. Ha hundo. What did you say that makes you so surprised? Oh, that's... When Hassan was speechless, Kim Ji-am stepped forward and urged him. Don't hide it. Tell me right away. Hassan, who had been hesitant about the question of Hyang, closed his eyes tightly and answered when he reached the Kim branch. He said he would agree to 40% if I were given the artillery used by the Navy. Canvas? It's artillery. Such cheeky. As soon as the word Wapo came out, Kim Ji-am started screaming. However, Hyang flicked the abacus with a cautious look on his face. It's artillery. Anyway, a new type of artillery with better performance was created. The problem is the butterfly effect. History has already become a mess, so should we even care about it? No. Is this too irresponsible? Hyang, who was thinking about various things, asked Mansour. Why do we need artillery? The route between Joseon and Aden is infested with pirates. As I came this time, I saw pirates avoiding the Joseon Navy. I think the reason is the cannons of the Joseon Navy. So, if you give me a cannon, I will accept 40%. In response to Mansour's answer, Hyang was lost in thought, tapping his fingers on the desk. It's not like I don't know about artillery over there anyway, since everyone who can use it is using it. However, Kim Ji-am was becoming more and more restless. My name? Please stay a moment. Hyang, who stopped Kim Ji-am, continued his thoughts. The deployment of a new type of artillery to replace the general firearm is currently scheduled, but it is too dangerous to give away the general firearm. After searching around for memories, Hyang found a suitable canvas. I think a general rule would be appropriate. The Ilkong Tong, which was about 2 chiak 4 chan, 74.2 centimeters, long and 2 chan 1 bun 5 ri, 6.7 centimeters, in diameter, was 2/3 the size of the Jangun firebox carried on the Panoxian. However, the artillery gun used in the Japanese guns had a range several times longer than that of an arrow, and if hit properly, it could reliably make a hole in most ships. At that time, seeing Hyang's thoughts getting longer, Kim Ji-am persuaded Hyang with a pale face. Your Majesty, no artillery. The artillery. Hopan, artillery is not something only Joseon possesses. I also have Myeongguk. Maybe pirates have it too. That's true, but Kim Ji-am became speechless at Hyang's point. As Hyang said, artillery was not just for Joseon. Myeongguk also had it, and Bukwan also had a small number of them. Among Joseon's neighboring countries, the Japanese country was the only one without artillery. No, if we remember the behavior of the Japanese pirates who harassed the Ming dynasty, we had no idea that the Japanese Empire might also have it. Hyang continued to organize his thoughts. In order for Joseon's foreign activities to become easier in the future, more countries must know about Joseon. In order to do that, our Joseon products must spread widely from now on. Ming and Japan alone are not enough. It should spread at least to the Arabian Peninsula and the Mediterranean region. Hyang, who was thinking deeply, looked at Mansour and opened his mouth. There is something to check first. Did you say that Aden is where the Otabi family lives? Yes, Prince. Wouldn't the monarch who rules the Aden region be angry if the Otabi family had artillery at their disposal? Mansour answered the question immediately. There is currently no monarch ruling in Aden. In the past, the Abbasid dynasty ruled, but that was more than 200 years ago, and now it is a free city for merchants. Hyang's eyes sparkled at Mansour's answer. After the Abbasid dynasty was overthrown by the Mongols in 1258, the Aden region was a free city of Muju communism. Of course, there was a Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt, but it was unable to extend its influence as far as Aden. And the famous Ottoman Turkish Empire had not yet escaped from the Anatolian Peninsula. After reorganizing his thoughts in response to Mansour's answer, Hyang proposed again. 30%. It also guarantees 5 years of exclusive dealing. Then, I will speak positively to Abama about the artillery. Please grant us a 10-year monopoly. The village firmly rejected Mansour's words. Not in 10 years. It will be guaranteed for 5 years as standard, and then negotiated every year thereafter. This is the final offer. Do you want to accept it or reject it? Hearing Hyang's words, Mansour calculated the profit and loss in his head. After thinking for a while, Mansour came to a conclusion. I will accept the prince's offer. When Mansour accepted the offer, the fragrance stood up. Then, I will try to talk to Abama. Please pray for the best. If Abima doesn't accept it, we'll have to argue again. Yes. Then, Kiang left the room with Hassan and Kim Jiam. Mansoor, the elders, and Rajab, who remained in the room, discussed the results of the negotiations. Isn't 30% too much? If it's 30% of the original price, that means it's only 3 times the price. As I said before, the individual letters will be greatly reduced, but think about the amount. Rather, it is beneficial. Wasn't the conclusion you reached that way 6 times higher? As Rajab continued to argue, Mansoor pointed out one thing he had forgotten. Have you forgotten? Is it true that we can reap tens of times more profit from the Joseon products we bring? That's true, but the more profit you make from spices, the more you can buy from Joseon. Mansoor smiled at Rajab's words. If that happens, Joseon products will become cheap. Let's look further away. Exclusivity for at least 5 years. Monopoly means that we can extract maximum profit by adjusting the price. Still, although Rajab still couldn't hide his regret, Mansoor's expression brightened. If you can get a cannon with Allah's blessing, you don't have to worry about pirates. In that case, as long as you watch out for the storm, 3 times the profit will be enough. In addition, if free navigation becomes possible, it can become more active than now, and the public confidence of the merchants increases. So this was a deal that could not be missed. You asked for artillery? And Saya, are you thinking positively? Yes, Abima. At Hyang's answer, Sejong looked at Hyang with a face full of worry. You probably don't know what a piece of artillery is, right? How can you not know? Sejong nodded at Hyang's answer. The person who was most deeply involved in not only the new artillery that was about to be deployed, but also the various types of artillery that were still being researched was the troublesome bastard in front of me. Okay, then what kind of artillery do you want to give away? The president of Japan is coming. It's the Japanese general. Not only King Sejong, but also the ministers looked relieved at Hyang's answer. However, the ministers continued to ask Hyang questions about his responsibility. Why are you here, President of Japan? According to the report, although the ship the merchants came on this time is large, it does not seem to be strong. In the case of the Jangun Wathong, even the Chaoxian cannot mount a few guns because it cannot handle the recoil. So, even if given to you, it is a weapon that cannot be used. At Hyang's words, all the ministers who had experienced the battles of the late Goryeo dynasty and early Seian dynasty, including the conquest of Tsushima Island, nodded. This was because we had received similar reports several times since then. Looking at the reactions of the ministers, Kang continued. The range and killing power of artillery guns below the Li Chungtong are similar to or slightly exceed those of the Kunsi. The rate of fire is nowhere near that of the Gunsi. So, didn't the military, not only the Jumgun, but also the Land Guards Army and the Jizeongun, unify into the Gapsik Jangshangtan and the Gapsik Masakingtan, and dissolve the existing entities below the Li Chungtong? At Hyang's point, the ministers faced reality once again. Okay, it was like that. But since we can't make new artillery for those merchants, I think a transplanted Führer would be the most appropriate. When the reactions of the ministers turned favorable, Dehean expressed his concerns. I understand what the Crown Prince said, but what if? What if those idiots copy the president? What if they make it in large quantities and attack us? Kang smiled and responded to Dehean's words. You are worrying too much. Our Joseon dynasty is already armed with artillery pieces with better performance than those of the Japanese general. The ministers nodded and muttered to Hyang's point. That's right. Dehean's face turned red at the mutterings of the ministers. Looking at the great scriptures, Hyang added an explanation. And copying also requires skill. Do you just copy the shape of the Führer? If they had that level of technology, there would be no need to ask for artillery from us. Fire artillery was an item that had already spread to many countries during the Yuan dynasty. Dehean kept his mouth shut at Hyang's words. After Dehean's remarks, there were no ministers who opposed Hyang's opinion. King Sejong came to a conclusion after checking the reactions of the ministers. The ministers do not have much opposition, and I think a general unity plan would be appropriate. So, how much will the Crown Prince give? I think it would be right to first judge by looking at the condition of the ship they came on. Sejong nodded at Hyang's answer. That would be correct. Then what about the price? I plan to replace half of it with the kawawa they brought. Kahua? Sejong looked at the items. Kahua? Kahua? There is no such item? It says black bean tea, Fado cha. After hearing the Sin's explanation, King Sejong searched for items again. Black bean tea. I see. There is also something called mung bean tea. Black beans are roasted coffee beans for drinking, and mung beans are raw coffee beans that have not been roasted. Is that so? What are the benefits of this tea? In response to Sejong's question, Kang talked about the efficacy of coffee. If you drink it when you are tired, you will quickly regain vitality, it will help those who cannot urinate properly, and it has many other benefits. But most importantly, the flavor is extraordinary. Sejong rubbed his chin in response to the intoxicating scent. How do you know so well? Kang, who was explaining excitedly at the thought of being able to drink coffee, suddenly looked embarrassed at Sejong's question and made an excuse. I saw it in a book. Sejong's eyes lit up at the word book. Book? I want to see my father too. It got mixed in with the books that were burned last time. Please forgive my carelessness. Treat books with respect. In response to Hyang's response, Sejong lightly cautioned and moved on. However, the ministers did not just ignore it. Sir, you burned the book? Books are precious things. Books contain the knowledge of our ancestors. Hyang responded with a perplexed face to Daehyun's comment that he was obsessed with Confucianism to his core. Because it was a miscellaneous book. It was he who said that there was something to be learned from miscellaneous books. Don't you think it's an excuse? In response to Daehyun's point, Hyang reacted as quickly as possible. In order to overcome this difficulty, okay? If you say this is a book you'll hate, that's it. Hyang, who had found a way out, responded with a perplexed expression. It was a book about the relationship between men and women. It seemed like it would be detrimental to public morals, so we immediately burned it. Well done. As Hyang expected, Daehyun immediately changed his attitude and praised Hyang. However, the expressions of King Sejong and the other ministers became fierce. This is because the books that served as the background for the rumored nightlife of incense were the books that had been burned, to be exact, the books that incense was said to have been burned. Greatness. Kuhum. However, since it was not a topic worth talking about, King Sejong and the ministers all cleared their throats with uncomfortable expressions. Daehyun muttered with an incomprehensible expression on his face. Why not? When Daehyun was taken aback when he saw that the gaze towards him was not kind, King Sejong quickly changed the subject. Then what do you plan to do with the other half? In response to Sejong's follow-up question, King calmly continued to explain. Then the corners of King Sejong and his subjects' mouths slowly rose. Done. Crown Prince, listen. I have entrusted you with this transaction, so please take charge of the artillery issue as well. Think of the national interest and do your best. When Sejong made his decision, King bowed her head and responded, I will carry out my will. King, who came out of the episode, slapped her mouth. This damn group, can't you tell the time and place? Let's relax. After warning herself, King muttered as she walked towards the East Palace. Come to think of it, why were the Muslims late in arming themselves with artillery? It was the Muslims who introduced gunpowder to the West, right? Why? As Hyang was thinking about solving a sudden question, the bell of the bell tower rang to announce the time. Dean. When Hyang heard the sound of a bell ringing in the distance, he remembered a passage from a book he had read before. As expected, was it thanks to the bell? When cannons were first made in Western Europe, cannon makers made cannons by welding iron plates. However, apart from performance issues, the cannon made in this way had a very high risk of explosion. However, because cannons were useful weapons, European countries conducted all kinds of research to create cannons that were safe and easy to use. What was born in that process was a cast bronze cannon, and cast bronze cannons quickly took hold. Cast bronze cannons were able to quickly become established because of the bells hanging in numerous churches in Europe. Bell makers who were skilled in casting bronze and large-sized objects easily created cast bronze cannons. Note 1. Bell makers were also involved in the casting of cannons in Goryeo as well. It was because of the availability of competent bell makers that gunpowder was able to be produced at a level that could be used in battle not long after gunpowder was introduced. After Buddhism was introduced to the Korean peninsula, casting technology there developed rapidly. The King Songdeok Divine Bell was an object that proved the casting technology of the unified Silla period. This casting technology was further developed during the Goryeo dynasty. As Buddhism flourished to its peak, many temples were built, and in the process of supplying the necessary bells to each temple, highly skilled foundry technicians were produced. After coming to this conclusion, King muttered with a bitter smile. Technology refined for a religion that calls for peace is being used for slaughter. It must be one of the common contradictions of history. King, who was entrusted with the entire process by King Sejong, carried out the work diligently. Contact the military unit and tell them to check how many Japanese rifles without trigger devices can be used. Yes, sir. Not long after, Jo Mal-sing, who heard what the Naguan said, came to Hyang and asked a question. Did you say it was a Japanese gun without a trigger device? Exactly. Wouldn't a Japanese gun barrel with a percussion device be more useful? In response to Jo Mal-sing's question, Hyang pointed out one problem. Because of the width, it's hard to just supply the amount we use, so why don't we give it to them too? At Hyang's point out, Jo Mal-sing made an ACHA expression. Okay. God made a mistake. No. Thanks to you, there are more items to ask them to get. Which one is it? In his remarks, Jo Mal-sing showed interest when Hyang found new items to add. If it's because of me, it's definitely related to the military. Hyang briefly answered Jo Mal-sing's question. It's mercury. Okay. If we can get the mercury right, we can increase the production of silver. At Hyang's answer, Jo Mal-sing's face lit up with joy. In order to obtain mercury in Joseon, it was necessary to import sandstone from the Ming and process it. However, mercury was an item that could not be easily mass-produced because quite a few people were harmed in the process. So Joseon had to take the next best option, purchasing mercury from Japan. But, can they get a lot of mercury? In response to Jo Mal-sing's question, Hyang leaned forward in his chair and answered, I don't know much about that. However, since they used a lot of mercury to research alchemy, I just think it will be easy to obtain. Thanks to Sejan's permission, the contract proceeded quickly. Before completing the contract, I need to check the ships you came on. Yes, why? Mansoor and the captain's faces became serious when they heard the words, I will check the ship. A ship was the captain's territory. The captain's faces hardened because they could not allow foreigners into their own territory. Hyang explained to them why they should check the ship. The recoil of artillery is so great that if the ship is weak, it cannot be mounted. All right. 2 days later, naval officers and craftsmen in charge of shipbuilding went down to Jamulpo, checked the condition of the merchant ships that Mansoor and his party had boarded, and submitted a report. Considering the size and strength of the hull, it is absolutely impossible to mount general fire barrels, and only a maximum of 3 gun fire barrels are possible. The township confirmed the report and negotiated with Mansoor based on it. Great. Then, I will purchase 3 guns per ship, for a total of 9 guns. What will be the purchase price for the 9 guns, the gunpowder to be used, the charger, and the pillbox? Mansoor answered the question with a perplexed face. It's hard to buy Joseon products right now, so I'll have to take out some credit. I refuse to accept full credit. So let's do it like this. I will ask you to pay half the purchase price in Kawawa, pay the rest on credit, and send a few men from our navy with you. Kahuweo? Mansoor discussed the proposal with the elders and Rajab. I will let you calculate the price at which you bought it without any problems. Mansoor's group's expressions worsened at the request for additional cents. However, when Hassan secretly gave him a glance, he accepted Hyang's opinion. Great. But why are we bringing the Joseon Navy on board? If you learn how to shoot with a gun barrel mounted on it, will you be able to hit it properly? It's something that requires long-term mastery. Besides, even though our relationship started as a transaction, shouldn't we continue our relationship for a long time? Hyang spoke softly with a benevolent expression. Mansoor responded with a bewildered expression at the sudden change in behavior of Hyang, who had been acting like he was going to eat her just moments before. That's what I meant. There will be ample training as you go. Also, when you bring items in, it would be better if there was someone there to find out what was valuable. Hearing Hyang's words, Mansoor and his party put their heads together again and exchanged opinions. That makes sense. Could it be that they're using tricks to figure out the sea route? Mansoor showed an expression that Rajab's words were no big deal. Of course it could be so. However, this is a sea route that even merchants in famous countries already know. So what's the problem? After a long discussion, Mansoor accepted the proposal. I will do as the prince suggests. Okay, then let's take the Kahuwa today. That evening, Mansoor had great regrets. They said it was the entire amount, but it really was all wiped out. Joseon officials even swept away all the coffee that Mansoor and his party had left to drink. Meanwhile, a storm was brewing in the military unit. From Chamui to Champion, everyone come here. In response to Jo Mal-sing's call to everyone below me and above you, the officials hurriedly gathered in front of Jo Mal-sing's desk. Is everyone gathered? Yes. Thank you. Upon hearing that everyone had gathered, Jo Mal-sing threw the report on the desk and shouted, If you guys are going to do something like this, resign immediately. Yes? Suddenly, the report on the Huaihue people's ships I submitted to the Lord. Is this really the only way to make it? Where is the report on the structure and pros and cons of the ships used by Huiho people? I still have orders for the craftsmen to write. That's the problem. If you're just going to do what you're told, why are you sitting in the position of superior? What is the benefit of preparing in advance before His Majesty the Lord gives his order? If you guys just think a little more, you won't have to do things twice. I'm sorry. If you apologize, you shouldn't create something to apologize for. How embarrassed I was at the assembly. The incident started because of a comment made by Hyang, who attended the assembly. By the way, can I see the report on the rescue of the ship the Huiho people came on? Zhou Maosing stuttered and answered Hyang's question. Ho, are you talking about the report on the rescue of the Hoho people's ship? That's not yet. As you know, Byongpan, aren't you researching a ship to be used for ocean voyages? So, you probably know that Byongpan purchased and inspected one ship each from the Ming Dynasty in the Japanese Empire. I know. But is it okay for work to be this slow when there is an opportunity that cannot be obtained even if money is paid? Once the report comes out, we can analyze it and make up for any shortcomings later in the process of loading the artillery onto the ship, right? Okay. As exchanges between the Ming and Japanese countries, especially the Aoki family, became more active, the county pressured King Sejong to purchase large ships from the Ming and Japanese countries one by one. If I had enough budget, I could have bought Yugu's boat and examined it. The problem is the damn budget. Are pairs something you can just buy at the market? Do you think the budget just comes out? You bastard, get out! Kiang, grumbling as he thought about the insults he received when he asked for additional budget for the purchase of a ship, completely disassembled the ship he had purchased with his craftsmen and examined every nook and cranny. I didn't know about the scent, but this was something Shin Sukju did during the reign of King Sejong. As soon as Zhou Maosing made a sound of pain, Kiang continued speaking. I'll say it again. The Huiho people brought a new ship, and we were able to look into the issue of mounting artillery. So isn't this a God-given opportunity? Yeah, right? Kiang's face hardened at the sight of Zhou Maosing stuttering. Surely there is no report? That's not it. When Zhou Maosing became speechless, Sejong joined the conversation. Is there no report? When we went to Sejong, Zhou Maosing answered urgently. Oh no, I'm organizing it now. Organizing. I thought reporting whether the artillery was equipped was an urgent matter, so I wrote only that part first. Is it? Sejong, who nodded to Zhou Maosing's answer, added. I also thought you had forgotten your days as a recorder and become lax. How could you forget that? Zhou Maosing broke into a cold sweat and vehemently denied what King Sejong said. Then when can I receive it? I will upload it within 5 days. You said all you have to do is clean it up? I want to see you in 3 days. I will. In this way, a storm broke out in the military. Why? Why? What makes you do something twice that could have been done once? Why? I apologize. If you apologize, don't apologize. Do you know how much more records you have to sort out every time you do something stupid? Do you even know? Didn't I tell you, my sister? Don't increase unnecessary records. As Zhou Maosing returned to the military service, several new rules were introduced to the military service. Do not create useless documents. Use tickets actively. Keep sentences concise. Accordingly, the documents produced by the military service were truly concise and clear. Thanks to this, King Sejong praised him like this. The documents coming from the military service these days are really nice to look at and read. The sentences are simple and clear, and the main point can be understood right away, so it would be good for other ministries to do this as well. I follow your orders. Zhou Maosing, who had been scolding his subordinates for a while, finally shouted, What are you doing? Write a report right now and bring it to me. If it's not on my desk within 2 days, I'll die, and you'll all die too. I will never die alone. Yes, sold. The military officers and artisans who wrote the report looked puzzled when asked to write the report again. Would you like me to rewrite the report? The official nodded to the question asked again by the craftsmen, who could not hide their bewildered expressions. That's right. If the report you posted last time was about whether or not the Huiho people's ship could use artillery, this time it is to report on the structural strengths and weaknesses. Structural pros and cons? Okay. Are there any reports you wrote some time ago using the Myeongguksian and the Japanese? You can make it like that. The head craftsman scratched his head and answered the official's words. All right. Then when do I have to write it? I should receive it within 2 days. I knew. Well then, I'm going. Don't forget that it's only 2 days. Yes, I understand. Take a look. The leader, who saw off the pacing official, swore as soon as the official disappeared. Damn it. If we handled this together last time, we won't have to do it again. What are officials? They always say that they are the only ones having a hard time. The leader, who cursed at being asked to do work that he would not have had to do if he had paid a little more attention, gathered his subordinate craftsmen. Gather together. Gapsick, take it and prepare your enemy. While a storm was raging in the military tank, Hojo Judge Kim Jiam was reporting to King Sejong. So, a merchant named Mansoor chose the product. After receiving Kim Jiam's report, Sejong looked at the list of products selected by Mansoor. As expected, porcelain and spices are popular. King Sejong smiled and liked the idea of purchasing large quantities of porcelain, the most cutting-edge high-value-added product at the time in the 15th century, and spices, a traditional luxury item. I don't know about fragrances, but porcelain was produced exclusively in the royal workshop. Therefore, most of the profits were contributing to enriching the national treasury. Following King Sejong's words, Kim Jiam gave a supplementary explanation. Diversifying the shape of the porcelain is what increased sales. The Crown Prince's idea worked. Is it? Sejong nodded with a happy face at Kim Jiam's words. Traditional China is boring. Competitiveness is weak. If things continue like this, your life will be short. After seeing the familiar shaped pottery, Kiang soon sketched a modern design and handed it over to his craftsman. The shape is a bit unusual, sir. They did it that way on purpose. Isn't the older brother of the pottery we are making now also making Myeongguk? But aren't people from the Ming dynasty, as well as people from the Hua dynasty, unable to survive without them? Kiang nodded and answered the words of Sajahang, the head of the government. Not really. However, although it may be difficult for the Japanese, the Mingguk people will soon make it similar. So, let's go one step ahead. Okay. Kiang continued to explain additionally as he nodded his head with an ambiguous expression, as if he didn't understand. And, the people in the far west also like him. However, since their eating and drinking habits are different from ours, wouldn't something that caters to them sell well? Understand. It was the head fraudster who immediately nodded at Hyang's words. Who? Sejong, who was looking at the list with a happy face, stopped at one item. You bought this much glassware? Isn't the glass originally from them? Kim Jiam immediately answered King Sejong's question. They share the same origins, but in terms of beauty and usefulness, our Joseon dynasty precedes them. Is it? As expected, the Crown Prince. When Kim Jiam secretly mentioned scent, Sejong burst out laughing. Haha, the Crown Prince has done so much. The big hit of glassware was largely due to the craftsmen, but scent also played a part. For artisans who made pottery, glass was a gift from heaven. Unlike pottery, where the result cannot be known for a long time until the clay is beaten, shaped, dried, glazed, and then fired in a kiln. The result of glass can be known as soon as it cools. If they don't like it, the convenience of being able to melt it in a kiln and make it again has greatly fueled the craftsman's desire to create. Incense quietly added firewood there. Can you make something like this? Is something like this even possible? What if you mix transparent glass liquid with colored glass liquid? Based on the glass products commonly seen in the 21st century, the craftsman's desire to create burned more intensely every time a set was mentioned. It was natural that products made using the properties of glass and stamped into molds had better designs than European and Arab products of the same period thanks to the interference of scent. Because I have a design that has evolved over hundreds of years. In response to the stimulation of this scent, Pietro and Raphael, as well as the Joseon craftsmen, vigorously blew on their exhalation tubes, blowpipes. Sejong, who couldn't hide his satisfaction at Hyang's performance, suddenly had a thought and looked around. Now that I think about it, I can't see the Crown Prince. What does the Crown Prince do? The guy who would have come by now and asked for the budget. Sejong, whose daily routine was to say, "You bastard, get out." When someone whined, "Give me the budget," asked about Hyang's fate with a somewhat empty look on his face. The merchant marine immediately answered King Sejong's question. The Crown Prince says he is now making tea with kawa. If it's kafua, black bean tea. Sejong, who paused for a moment, quickly got up and left. I need to rest for a while. Yes, Your Highness. After declaring the suspension of the meeting, King Sejong left Junjiangjan and headed to Donggungjin. Oh yeah, it smells just right. After finishing roasting the coffee beans that had been swept away from Mansoor, Kiang smelled the smell and looked happy. As he did not like the scent of the coffee beans that had already been roasted for Mansoor and the Huiho people to drink, he decided to roast them himself. I heard that the nonsense I did while being criticized like that was so helpful. When I watched a drama set in a coffee shop that was popular in the 21st century, I was drawn to coffee instead of the love line between the main characters. Thanks to this, Kang became very knowledgeable about coffee, to the point where he was told, "You should open a coffee shop instead of a blacksmith shop." After roasting using a brazier and a griddle, a frying pan from the Joseon dynasty, Kang grinded the coffee beans in a small mortar and made coffee. Of course it's this scent. It occurred to me that I should also make professional tools. Kang rubbed his hands happily, thinking about drinking coffee, and was about to pour it into his cup when the eunuch outside announced King Sejong's arrival. "Please, your majesty, please." This, Kang, who hastily refined the clothing, opened the door and politely welcomed King Sejong as he entered. "See you, Abama." "Oh, is that Kahua?" Kang immediately nodded to Sejong's question. "That's right. You guys drink tea, so I'll have a cup too." "Yes." At King Sejong's words, the scent politely offered the freshly brewed coffee to King Sejong in a coffee cup, a prototype of a teacup made for Europeans, along with the candy cane paper that had been placed next to it and the charak, tualal, milk, cup that he had brought from the Abil Island in the morning. He also held it out. "Try it as is at first, then add the candy and terix to suit the flavor." "Is that so?" Sejong took a light sip and frowned. "It uses a lot, but the flavor is good." Then, Sejong mixed sugar and milk, tasted it, and nodded. "It's okay." Sejong slowly emptied his coffee and looked at the scent. "Indeed, it seems like your energy is coming back quickly. It's a highly effective tea. The ministers will like it." King looked embarrassed at Sejong's words. "Wouldn't it be nice if I didn't swear?" After tasting coffee, King Sejong introduced it to his ministers. "This is the kahua that those people brought with them." "Is that so?" The ministers sitting around the conference room next to the main hall of Junjiangjan stared blankly at the teacup in front of them as King Sejong spoke. "The color is truly unique." Li Jik expressed his appreciation while looking at the color of the black coffee. "It's not true that the color is black. I said what I wanted to say in as many ways as possible." Sejong smiled and agreed with Li Jik's words. "That's right. The color is truly unique. When I first saw it, I thought it was medicine. The scent is also unique." Sejong nodded in response to Meng Sason's assessment of the unique bitter aroma of roasted coffee. "I felt that way too." "Ruler, let's drink. Just take a light sip first, then add some candy to suit the flavor. If you add corruption, the flavor becomes softer, but corruption is hard to find, and it is easy to drink even without corruption." "Yes, yes." When King Sejong offered coffee, the ministers nodded repeatedly, but his face was full of hesitation. "Just by looking at the color, it looks like a decoction. The tonic and the poisonous medicine are the same color. Is this tea called kahua a tonic or a poisonous medicine?" "Huh? Why aren't you drinking it?" "Drink it." In response to King Sejong's greeting, the ministers closed their eyes tightly and raised their teacups. Right, right. After taking a first sip, the ministers quickly found the candy cane and unwrapped the candy. As sweetness was added and it became easier to drink, the ministers began to savor the coffee with a more relaxed look. "How do you feel?" In response to King Sejong's question, the ministers expressed their impressions one by one. At first, it was just bitter, but later on, you can feel a slight nutty and sour taste, which is truly mysterious. The scent is also unique. It's hard to define it in one word, but it has its own flavor. Yes? I think so too. In this much warmer atmosphere, King Sejong and the ministers chatted about various things and enjoyed coffee. So, after drinking a cup of coffee, King Sejong returned to Jianjin and went to the party house to ask the ministers, "How do you feel?" The ministers answered King Sejong's question with surprised faces. "How amazing! Before I drank that tea, I was physically and mentally tired, but now I feel energized." "You're right. What a strange difference." King Sejong looked satisfied as he looked at the faces of the ministers, who were more energetic than before drinking tea. The Crown Prince has known something truly good. "Yes. Okay then. Since you seem to have regained your energy, let's get to work." "Day." "Yes, Your Highness." "Oh, and this kahua powder will be distributed to each government office in moderation, so have a drink whenever you feel tired." "I am devastated." Later, King heard this news through the eunuchs and laughed. The nobles who always drank green tea started drinking coffee. In the 21st century, it would be like drinking only coffee, and then drinking a highly concentrated caffeine beverage. Would you kill one of them? If Abimama knew what she did, then she is truly an evil person. It was the scent of Sejong shaking his head at his trick and bringing the coffee cup to his mouth. Soon after, the ministers were astonished by King Sejong's tricks. Sleep, I can't sleep. The officials, who had dinner and leisurely drank coffee, were surprised to learn that they had been freed from the demon that had been tormenting them as always. For what? Officials who escaped from Suma looked for the cause. The only thing that is different from usual is that kahua. Could it be that it not only energizes you, but also drives you away from sleep? After learning the reason, the officials looked at Gangneongjin and Donggunjin. Now you're telling me to work without sleeping. That's what they said, but starting with King Sejong, the great and small officials immediately became addicted to coffee. When the sun rises and you drink a cup of coffee with sleepy eyes, you can't escape the powerful, high-concentration caffeine effect that focuses your eyes and energizes you once you taste it. As expected, it was evil medicine. But why can't I quit? The officials shed tears as they filled their empty cups with coffee. When they first tasted the effects of caffeine, the reactions of the officials who grumbled, "You're telling me not to even sleep," changed to this. "You have to drink this to survive." As large and small officials sought coffee in large quantities, the number of servants and government servants who did chores in government offices increased. Before the officials arrive, they place a kettle full of water on the stove and prepare clean cotton cloths to drain the coffee. Afterwards, the morning routine was to prepare a jar of roasted coffee powder and a jar of candy. And whenever he had time, he cleaned the cups that officials served after eating, kept replenishing clean and dried cotton cloths, and finally, roasted and ground raw coffee beans to replenish the used coffee powder. However, after several trials and errors, the officials who understood the importance of roasting made a request to King Sejong, and a new job called Hyukduchuan, Fredo Chaiyun, was established as the 9th rank of Jangjang. And this job became the first official barista in Joseon, or rather in the world. All of this happened less than a month after Hyung introduced Sejong to the taste of coffee. However, side effects of coffee occurred in unexpected places. A sleeping quarters in the Middle War. King Sejong, who had fallen asleep after having an affair with Queen Sohyun, asked in her sleepy voice as Queen Sohyun, who was lying next to her, continued to move. "What makes you uncomfortable?" "No, I just can't sleep." King Sejong stood up at Queen Sohyun's words. "Are you worried about something?" "No, I just can't sleep." "Shall I call the royal family?" "Not to that extent." "Ah." Queen Sohyun, speechless, muttered to herself. "Is it because of that car?" "Car? What car?" "I feel a bit depressed these days, so I drank some black bean tea." "Ah. If you drink that tea, you won't be able to sleep." King Sejong nodded at Queen Sohyun's words. King Sejong lightly patted Queen Sohyun on the shoulder. "Don't be too conscious of not being able to sleep, just relax, and you will be able to sleep quickly. Let's grab it." "Aye." At King Sejong's words, Queen Sohyun snorted and acted coquettish. As Queen Sohyun snuggled into her arms and showed off her coquetry, King Sejong cleared his throat. "Greatness. Huh. It's late at night. Aye, this." In any case, Sejong, who had just turned 30, was also in his prime. King Sejong started the engine at the coquetry of his wife, whom he had not seen in a long time. The next day, King Sejong ended up oversleeping for the first time in a long time. As this happened frequently not only to Queen Sohyun, but also to her concubines, King Sejong eventually had to issue an order. Weirs are prohibited from drinking more than 2 cups of black bean tea per day. Do not drink black bean tea after dinner. Meanwhile, merchants who heard rumors about black bean tea visited Hojo. Even small people want to buy black bean tea. Black bean tea. At the words of the merchants, the Hojo official looked at the records and looked embarrassed. This was because the amount of coffee beans that Mansoor and his party brought was not a large amount, and even though only a month had passed, the amount consumed by the palace and government was significant. "If I go this time, it won't be until a year later. So, if you subtract the maximum amount to hold." The Hojo official, who was calculating the quantity by flicking the abacus, answered, "There isn't much stock coming in this time. If we sell it, it can be as much as 1 tube, about 3.75 kilograms. Is it one for each merchant?" "No, 1 building in total." "I'll buy it." "No, I will buy it." In response to the merchant's clamor, the Hojo official asked with a relaxed expression, raising his coffee cup to his mouth. "Okay, how much would you like to buy it for?" After a fierce price competition, a merchant was chosen, and a Hojo official asked, handing over a bag containing 1 cup of coffee beans. But has the rumor about this car already spread? Oh my, don't even talk. There are a lot of people preparing for the civil service exam. Some of the officials working at the government office took a small amount of coffee and took it home, and the rumor about coffee spread among the civilian population. There was a rumor going around that if you drink just one cup, you can stay up all night. And coffee was even nicknamed mathematics tea. At the merchant's answer, the Hojo official who was drinking coffee chuckled and muttered, "Even if you pass the exam, what good is it if you have a hard time writing?" The merchant grumbled inwardly at the official's words. "Going to be. You can say that because you've already done it." Whether in the 21st century or the 15th century Joseon, civil servants were a symbol of stability. In particular, as King Sejong promoted the construction of Jiangjang, the hiring of government officials increased, and as green bonuses were provided to the point where they could be used in real life, the number of people studying the civil service examination increased. In addition, as rumors circulated that the ban on Northwesterners and Westerners from going to work will be lifted soon. Even discouraged Northwesterners and Westerners joined the competition. As Joseon was gradually changing, the departure of Mansour and his party was getting closer. Has the investigation into the ship the Huiho people came on been completely completed? Yes. King Sejong continued to confirm Zhou Maoseng's answer. Is there anything new? The strength of the hull is nothing compared to our Panoxian, but the waterproof material used was truly unique. What did you use? We used bitumen. Although it is called bitumen, it is not made using resin as we know, but rather it is made using black, sticky oil that comes out of the ground. Is it? Hutta. Sejong let out an exclamation. There are still many things in this world we don't know. That's right. Abama, Soja. There is something I would like to ask the captain of Byongpan for a moment. I allow it. I am devastated. After expressing gratitude to King Sejong, Kiang asked Zhou Maoseng a question. Do you know the cost of the bitumen they use? Yes. I did some research. It was 1/10 the price of bitumen made using rosin. In response to Zhou Maoseng's answer, Kiang proposed to King Sejong. Abama, waterproofing is the most important thing in building and maintaining a boat. I think we can do this cheaper if we buy their bitumen. Why don't you add bitumen to the list of purchases you will require from them? I guess it'll be okay. So be it. I am devastated. Once the import of bitumen was decided, Sejong moved on to other agenda items. Has the selection of naval officers and interpreters who will accompany us on this voyage been completed? King Yejo Pansio and Zhou Maoseng immediately answered King Sejong's question. Preparations have already been completed. We selected 6 young people from among the interpreters who were fluent in the Ming language. The Navy also selected 6 people with deep expertise in artillery and navigation. Good job. I'm sure you made them aware that there is a lot to do on this voyage, right? We have already made enough people aware, and everyone is very motivated. Is it? Sejong, who was thinking about something for a moment, opened his mouth. Prepare a banquet for the military officers and interpreters who are leaving this time. I will encourage them. The ministers responded to King Sejong's decision by bowing their heads in unison. If the chief minister personally encourages them, they will do their best. So Moon is devastated. 2 days later, a banquet was held at Gyeonghor. At the event for those who left Northeast Asia for the first time in the Joseon dynasty, King Sejong personally filled the cups of military officers and interpreters and encouraged them. When our Joseon leaves this corner and moves to distant foreign lands, the work you have done will shine. So, do your best to complete your mission on this voyage. I will keep each and every bone in mind and reform myself. 5 days later, Mansour's fleet left Kamolpo. They were the first people of Joseon to go to the ocean. The 11th year of King Sejong, 1429, year of Ju, entering the second half of the scene. Not only King Sejong, but also the court ministers and officials were in a strange state of tension. The reason King Sejong, ministers, and officials were all nervous was because it was finally time for a full-scale reorganization of the administrative organization. To ensure smooth progress, the 6th group as well as the members of Jiangjang stayed up all night, reviewing and revising the plan. The ultimate purpose of Jiangjang is to help as many people as possible have a healthy income and escape from poverty. Yes. King Sejong nodded to the explanation of Jiangjang Dachak, Byonggai Riang. Sejong's eyes as he looked at Byonggai Riang were full of worry. Captain Bayan has become very weak. Byonggai Riang, who was appointed as the Dachak of Jiangjang in the 2nd year of King Sejong's reign, completely took his place as the Dachak of Jiangjang as King Sejong proceeded with the renovation. As Byonggai Riang continued to hold the position of Dachak, Jiangjang's work clearly had continuity. Although his private life was full of all kinds of scandals, Bayan Gairiyang was so outstanding academically that he was able to take charge of Jifyeongjin's Daechak. Afterwards, as King Sejong's funeral progressed, government officials and ministers of the six dynasties looked at Bayan Gairiyang with envious eyes. This was because when the fierce winds raged over the issue of bribery and corruption, Bayan Gairiyang, who was a member of Daechak, was able to avoid the fierce winds. Although he had to spit out the land he had received from previous kings, there were not many gifts that came thanks to his position as Jifyeongjin Daechak, which in some ways could be considered a handshake position. If it weren't for his petty personality, he would have been a political leader. He has a petty personality, so he must study Jifyeongjin Daechak. Although there were various rumors going around, young Gairiyang did his best in his position as Daechak of Jifyeongjin. His petty personality played a big role in ensuring that he was thorough in the process of policy research. Of course, being so meticulous had the disadvantage of narrowing your field of view, but you also had the quickness to make up for it when something was pointed out. Of course, the scholars of Jifyeongjin had to suffer disappointment every time. For Bayan Gairiyang, who had such a petty personality, researching and improving Jiangjang's policies was a significant burden. Thanks to this, while other subjects of similar age were flying around, Bayan Gairiyang was rapidly weakening. I guess I'll have to prepare for Captain Bayan's successor soon. King Sejong, who was considering a successor after seeing Bayan Gairiyang's weakened appearance, asked a question. That is the final goal, but there are many things that need to be resolved before that. That's right. Jifyeongjin, Hojo, and Ijo believe that the success of these two issues must be decided first. In response to Bayan Gairiyang's answer, King Sejong turned to Ijo and Hojo, who were present, and asked a question. What are the two problems? Kim Jiam immediately answered King Sejong's question. It is currency and administrative reform. The question is which of the two is more efficient to execute first. In response to Kim Jiam's answer, Sejong stroked his beard and asked, wasn't that part supposed to begin with the reorganization of administrative districts? It was, but things have changed. Things have changed? Yes. When we first planned the Jiangjang, we planned to reorganize the administrative districts and then enforce the circulation of currency. It did. Wasn't the reason why they did that because they had been trying to use currency all along, but there was a lot of resistance? Kim Jiam immediately responded to Sejong's point. Yes, it was like that. But now things have changed? Yes, that's right. Why? No. How? No. Did encouraging commerce and industry change the situation? Kim Jiam answered King Sejong's question with a slightly embarrassed expression. There are many reasons, but some somewhat absurd things have led the people to demand currency. Ridiculous things? There is a bathhouse and a shed. King Sejong looked astonished at Kim Jiam's answer. How on earth do bathhouses and schemes use currency? No, just, the crown prince mentioned the bathroom, right? When Sejong remembered what Hyang had said, Kim Jiam answered right away. That's right. When recovering from the Great Hanseon fire, you said that the construction of a bathhouse would create a need for currency. Yes, I did. Indeed. I thought the chances were high, but I didn't expect to see results so quickly. At King Sejong's words, Bayan Gairiyang joined the conversation. It appears to be the result of many people responding favorably to the public hygiene advocated by the Crown Prince. Public hygiene? To be exact, it's soap. Sejong became confused by the increasingly incomprehensible answers. The township, which installed a bathhouse while restoring the area devastated by the Great Fire, gathered not only the National Assembly, but also lawmakers in Hanseong and military doctors from the military unit and held a briefing session on the importance of public hygiene. This was not just once, but briefing sessions were held repeatedly before the rainy season began and after it ended. The internal medicine doctors and military doctors who already knew Hyang's whereabouts and had read the translations of the medical books of the children that Hyang had obtained immediately accepted Hyang's claims. As a result, as sanitary conditions in the palace and county improved, the number of people in the palace and county contracting infectious diseases, mainly skin diseases, decreased significantly. Private sector lawmakers who saw these practical effects also began to take interest in the importance of public hygiene and began to emphasize cleanliness to the private sector as well. As Area 51 released Bizo onto the market just in time, the people began to pay attention to cleanliness. It may be a bit annoying, but how can you prevent minor illnesses just by washing your hands well? With this attention to cleanliness, the popularity of public bathhouses gradually increased. Although many years have passed, it was the early Joseon dynasty, when traces of Goryeo still remained strong. So there was little aversion to bathing, which also played a role. As bathing became popular in redevelopment areas, demolition of buildings and construction of bathhouses became frequent in other areas of Hanseon. And at the entrance of the bathhouse built in this way, in addition to charging bathing fees, they also sold bijo. Therefore, it was common for many people to take a bath while going to buy a treasure trove. When bijo was first released on the market, the people who responded by asking, "What is it used for?" cheered for its various uses. Not only was it useful for cleansing the body, but the phenomenon of cleaning dishes with a scrub brush made by rubbing bijo into foam would clean them cleanly. So many women regarded bijo as precious as if they were worshipping a sacred drink. As bijo was used in this way, various problems arose, and as the problems that arose one after another, the people began to demand currency. First of all, the first problem pointed out was the lifespan of bijo, or soap. Soap's biggest enemy was moisture. Moisture was removed as much as possible during the process of producing soap, but since soap is always used close to water, the consumption rate was quite high. So, soap was purchased in large quantities through bathhouses, stores, grocery stores, and cloth sellers, but as there was no moisture-blocking packaging like in the 21st century, cases of soap melting upon contact with moisture in the air, especially during the rainy season, frequently occurred. In the end, people living in urban areas purchased one or two items in small quantities at stores or bathhouses, but the problem was that they were cheap. In exchange for 1 or 2 bars of soap, cotton cloth was of a size that could be used as a mop, so most of it was covered with grain, but grain was also a headache. The same applies to the bathhouse usage fee. The amount was small enough that even ordinary people could do it once a week, so it was a hassle to pay for it with cotton cloth or grain every time. In the end, the residents of Dongri, where the bathhouse was located, made ledgers and enjoyed bathing on credit. The problem was when settling the expenses incurred on credit. Whenever we organized things every 15 days or a month, there were frequent fights over did you do it or didn't you do it? In the end, the people reached the following conclusion. Shit. Let's spend the money on notification or education instead. That would be better. The need for currency has indeed emerged in an unexpected place. Upon hearing Kim Jiam's report, King Sejong expressed his impressions with an expression of still bewilderment. At King Sejong's words, the ministers, including Kim Jiam, nodded. Then is Gaijak the same reason? Kim Jiam immediately answered King Sejong's question by bowing his head. That's right. Because Gaijak was not expensive, there was a lot of unrest, and as a result, people began to talk about their inconvenience. King Sejong snorted and was lost in thought at the words of the ministers. Sejong, who was sorting out the situation in silence, looked at the ministers and opened his mouth. If you listen to what the ministers are saying now, they say they have to decide the order of precedence, but they seem to want to distribute currency first. Is that correct? Yang Wijing stepped forward and answered King Sejong's question. So it is. The reason is? This is because the people say they are uncomfortable. Inconvenience turns into dissatisfaction, and as dissatisfaction accumulates, it can easily turn into half-heartedness. King Sejong was lost in thought as he tapped the armrest with his fingers at Yang Wijing's remarks. After thinking for a while, Sejong asked a question. I will ask the officers. Please ask. The people who want to use currency now seem to be mainly those who live in cities. Is not it? No. The majority of people live in urban areas. How spread out are the public bathhouses and branch offices? Even so, it has spread to almost all cities with a population of 5,000 or more. With a population of over 5,000. So, has it spread almost to the county level? So it is. But aren't there an overwhelmingly greater number of people living in small towns than those living in cities? Do everyone who lives in such places agree with the use of currency? Isn't it a hasty decision to just listen to what people who live in the city have to say? Sejong could not hide his worry and continued to listen. King Sejong was also keenly aware of the need to use currency and wanted it more earnestly than anyone else. However, he also knew well that successive kings had promoted the use of currency, but the reason it failed each time was because the people did not respond favorably. Therefore, King Sejong could not hastily accept the opinions of the ministers. As King Sejong continued to hesitate, Kim Jiam stepped forward and spoke. According to reports coming from the monopoly, the demand for currency is increasing even in small towns below the prefecture. Of course, it's not yet the mainstream, but King Sejong's face brightened little by little at Kim Jiam's report. However, King Sejong was meticulous. It is good to see that demand is increasing even in small villages below the county. However, it can be dangerous if you do not properly understand the reason why such demand is increasing. Have you been informed of the reason? Yes. At Kim Ji-yeon's gesture, the Hojo official who had been waiting behind him came forward carrying a tray with books on it. When King Sejong received the book from the merchant ship, Kim Ji-yeon continued, "If you look at the book, you will see that the street traders in such small towns strongly want to use currency. This is because the cotton cloth and grain received as payment are a burden. Payment's compensation alone is not enough. Farmers want it too. This is because it is not easy to preserve grain." While listening to Kim Ji-yeon's explanation, King Sejong read the report carefully. King Sejong read the report submitted by Kim Ki-yeon from beginning to end and came to a conclusion. "I understand the officer's opinions well. However, you cannot make a decision right away. The reason why more attention was paid to small local towns in the process of promoting Jiangjang was to break down those who took lightly the authority of the king and the court and obeyed the authority of the town's landlords or noblemen. Only by breaking down this can we pursue the public interest of allowing as many people as possible to enjoy a peaceful life." Thus, Sejong paused for a moment. When King Sejong paused for a moment, the ministers focused their attention on him. Sejong, who gathered the attention of the ministers, came to a conclusion. "It's not a good idea to make a hasty decision, so think it over a little more." The ministers bowed their heads at Sejong's decision. "I follow your orders. Then, let's take a short break." "Yes, Your Highness." King Sejong, who had dismissed his ministers and was sitting alone in the main hall gathering his thoughts, called for a merchant ship. "Merchant ship?" "Yes, Your Highness." "Call the Crown Prince." "Yes." While the merchant ship that received King Sejong's order found another envoy and delivered the order, King Sejong muttered softly, "It's not the time for this kid to clean up the house, but we should give him some homework. It's past time for him to keep doing what he wants."